The Sith. Probably the most iconic villains ever, and let's be honest, the biggest pain in the galaxy's ass for thousands of years. These guys set the gold standard for what a galaxy-threatening bad guy should look like. We gotta give them that. In this video, we're diving deep into the Sith lore, all the secrets, history and hidden stuff that never made it to the big screen. And trust me, there's enough mind-blowing material here for an entire film trilogy, and we'd still just be scratching the surface. Now, let's begin. What happens when you get power and you want more? That question right there is the entire Sith story, and it starts with the Force. But what is the Force? Well, here's the deal. The Force has been around forever, like billions of years. It's this cosmic energy that connects everything. People, planets, stars, all of it. Before the Jedi or Sith existed, different species across the galaxy started figuring out they could tap into it. Some used it to heal, move stuff with their minds. But they noticed the Force had two different vibes. There was this peaceful side that came from being selfless and harmonious. Then there was this raw, intense side that fed off emotions, anger, fear, passion, desire. It's like having incredible power at your fingertips. Do you use it gently, always thinking about others? Or do you grab it and bend it to your will? The Jedi went with the peaceful route. They built their whole thing around meditation, serenity, letting go of attachments. They saw the Force as something you should serve, like being its guardian. Pretty noble. But they had this weird take on balance. They claimed balance meant the light side should win, and the dark side was basically corruption that needed to be wiped out. But hold on, if you completely eliminate one side, is that really balance? Or are you just forcing your view on the universe? Some Force users weren't buying it. They asked uncomfortable questions like, why are emotions bad? Why is passion dangerous? Why should we deny fundamental parts of being alive? They were serious practitioners who thought there might be another way. Because here's the thing about emotions, they're powerful fuel. Fear sharpens your focus. Anger pushes you beyond your limits. Love makes people do the impossible. The early dark side users saw this. They viewed the Force as a tool to master and command, not something to passively serve. This created a fundamental split in Force philosophy that's lasted for millennia. On one side, you've got the Jedi saying, peace and serenity, trust in the Force, let go of the outcome. On the other side, you've got what would become the Sith philosophy, saying use your passion, bend the Force to your will, take control of your destiny. Both sides had points worth considering. The Jedi path could lead to wisdom and inner peace, but it could also lead to stagnation, suppression of natural feelings, and a kind of arrogance where you think your way is the only right way. The dark side path promised power and freedom, but it came with the risk of being consumed by your own passions, losing yourself to ambition and cruelty. There were these early Force users who tried to walk a middle path. They experimented with both approaches, trying to understand the full spectrum of the Force. Some of them pulled it off, finding a genuine balance, but many others, they went too far into the dark side and couldn't come back. Because here's the harsh truth, the dark side is addictive. Once you get a taste of that raw power, that feeling of unlimited potential, it's incredibly hard to pull back. These experimenters did some wild stuff. They pushed the boundaries of what the Force could do. They were working on immortality, on transforming living matter, on creating life itself through the Force. The problem was a lot of these experiments required drawing heavily on the dark side, and they often involved, shall we say, morally questionable methods. You can't learn to extend life indefinitely without experimenting on living subjects. You can't master Sith alchemy without test subjects who probably didn't volunteer. The mainstream Jedi Order watched all this with growing alarm. They'd established themselves as the dominant Force-using organization in the galaxy, aligned with the Galactic Republic. They had rules, codes of conduct, strict training methods. They believed their way kept Force users safe from corruption, and when they saw other Force users going down these experimental paths, they saw danger. But who gets to decide the right way to use the Force? The Jedi had power, numbers, political backing. They could enforce their philosophy. But does might make right? Some Force users genuinely believed the Jedi were limiting themselves, holding back the true potential of the Force because of fear. You had Force users within the Jedi Order itself who questioned the restrictions. They'd study ancient texts, explore forbidden techniques, push the boundaries of what was allowed. The Jedi leadership tried to keep a lid on this, but you can't suppress curiosity and ambition forever. They saw weakness in the Jedi's self-imposed restrictions. What's fascinating is how this philosophical split reflects real human dilemmas. How much should we restrain our ambitions? Is it better to be safe or to push boundaries? Should we trust in a greater good or take control of our own fate? The Force, in Star Wars lore, basically amplifies these questions to cosmic levels. The early Force users who leaned toward the dark side weren't necessarily evil at the start. Many of them were brilliant, driven individuals who wanted to unlock the Force's full potential. They believed they could handle the power, that they were disciplined enough to use the dark side without being corrupted. And you know what? Some of them were probably right, at least for a while. But the dark side has this insidious nature. It changes you gradually. What starts as using anger to enhance your abilities becomes needing anger to feel powerful. What begins as studying forbidden knowledge becomes obsession. The line between using the dark side and being used by it gets real blurry real fast. This is where the Sith story really begins to take shape. There was this fundamental disagreement about the nature of power and the Force. There were Force users who looked at the galaxy and saw endless potential for those brave enough to seize it. So we've got this simmering tension in the Jedi Order, right? Well, around 7,000 years before the Battle of Yavin, that's the first Death Star explosion for reference, things finally exploded, and I mean literally exploded, into what became known as the 100-Year Darkness. Yeah, a century of straight-up war within the Jedi Order itself. There were these Jedi who'd been studying the dark side in secret, experimenting with techniques the Order had banned. These were legitimately brilliant Force users who believed the Jedi were holding everyone back from understanding the Force's true potential. Lead among them were three names you need to know: Ajunta Pal, Zozan, and Karnes Muir. Ajunta Pal was apparently one of the most talented Jedi swordsmen of his era. Dude was a prodigy with a lightsaber, but he got frustrated with the Jedi's philosophical restrictions. He started asking dangerous questions during council meetings, challenging the Masters on their interpretations of the Force. The guy was charismatic too, which made him dangerous in a different way. He could convince others to see things his way. Zozan was different. She came at it from a more scholarly angle, diving deep into ancient Force texts that the Jedi had locked away in their restricted archives. She found references to techniques and powers that made what the Jedi taught look like kindergarten stuff. We're talking about manipulating life and death, bending minds, creating illusions so real they could kill you. She became obsessed with understanding why the Jedi feared this knowledge instead of mastering it. Karnes Muir was the darkest of the three from the start. This guy was experimenting with Sith alchemy before there was even a Sith Empire. He was trying to create life, twist it, reshape it into new forms. His experiments were grotesque. There are records suggesting he was working on ways to transfer consciousness, to cheat death by jumping from body to body. The Jedi found out about his lab and were absolutely horrified. These three became the core of a growing movement within the Order. They attracted other Jedi who felt constrained, who wanted more, who believed power shouldn't be feared but embraced. And they started teaching their followers these forbidden techniques in secret. The Jedi Council eventually caught wind of what was happening. They tried to shut it down quietly at first, pulling these Jedi aside for counseling, assigning them to distant temples, basically trying to separate them and kill the movement through isolation. But it was too late. Too many Jedi had tasted that forbidden fruit and weren't about to give it up. The real breaking point came when Ajunta Pal and his followers openly challenged the Council's authority. They wanted to fundamentally reshape what the Jedi Order was. They argued that the Jedi's fear of the dark side was itself a corruption, a weakness that prevented true understanding of the Force. In their view, a real Jedi should master all aspects of the Force, light and dark. The Council's response was basically, absolutely not, and if you don't stop, you're out. So Ajunta Pal's group said, fine, we'll do it ourselves, and straight up rebelled. This wasn't a debate anymore. This was war. The 100-Year Darkness was brutal. Brother fought brother, master fought apprentice, temples burned, planets became battlegrounds. The dark side users were often winning individual battles because they were willing to use techniques the Orthodox Jedi considered taboo. No moral restrictions means you've got a serious tactical advantage, but they had a fatal flaw that would plague the Sith for millennia. They kept fighting among themselves. Ajunta Pal would be leading an assault, and one of his own generals would try to overthrow him mid-battle. The dark side makes you powerful, sure, but it also feeds paranoia and ambition. Everyone wanted to be the top dog. Cooperation was always temporary, always fragile. The Jedi, for all their limitations, had unity. They trusted each other. They worked together. And over the course of a century, that unity ground down the dark side rebels. The turning point came at the Battle of Corvus, where the Jedi finally managed to corner the main force of Dark Jedi and just overwhelmed them with sheer numbers and coordinated tactics. Ajunta Pal and the surviving Dark Jedi found themselves beaten, scattered, and hunted. The Jedi Council faced a choice: execute them or show mercy. Remember, these were former Jedi, people they'd trained alongside, lived with. Some were even family, but they were also incredibly dangerous and completely corrupted by the dark side. The Council chose exile. They stripped the Dark Jedi of their connection to the Republic, loaded them onto ships, and basically told them, leave known space and never come back. If they ever returned, they'd be killed on sight. It was mercy, sure, but it was also pragmatic. The war had exhausted everyone, and the Jedi probably didn't want to deal with the moral weight of executing hundreds of former comrades. So Ajunta Pal, Zozan, Karnes Muir and their followers, maybe a few thousand Dark Jedi and their supporters, got shoved into ships and sent into the unknown regions of the galaxy. The Jedi probably thought that was the end of it. Out of sight, out of mind, problem solved. They were so wrong. These Dark Jedi weren't broken by defeat. They were pissed off and more convinced than ever that they were right. The exile just reinforced their belief that the Jedi were weak, that they feared true power, and now they had all the time in the world to explore the dark side without anyone stopping them. During their experiments before the exile, they'd already achieved some crazy stuff. There are records of them extending their lifespans through dark side rituals. They'd learned to drain life force from others to heal themselves. Some had mastered techniques to preserve their consciousness after death, binding their spirits to objects or locations. This wasn't theoretical anymore, they'd actually done it. The whole immortality thing was huge for them. The Jedi accepted death as natural, part of the cosmic balance, but the Dark Jedi saw death as the ultimate limitation, and they were determined to overcome it. As their ships drifted into uncharted space, these exiled Dark Jedi had no idea they were about to stumble onto something that would change galactic history forever. They were expecting to find some backwater planets where they could rebuild in isolation, maybe carve out a small empire in the Outer Rim where the Republic couldn't reach them. What they found was so much better than that, or worse, depending on your perspective. The galaxy is massive, right? Thousands of inhabited systems, countless species, whole civilizations rising and falling in regions the Republic had never explored. The Dark Jedi's ships, driven by damaged hyperdrives and desperation, eventually dropped out of hyperspace in a remote system in the Outer Rim. The system was called Horaset, and orbiting its red sun was a planet called Korriban. Now Korriban wasn't empty, far from it. The planet was home to a species that would give the Dark Jedi exactly what they needed to transform from exiled rebels into the founders of the most powerful dark side empire in galactic history. Korriban was this harsh desert world, all red sand and jagged rock formations. The whole planet had this oppressive feeling to it, like the air itself was heavy. Turns out the place was absolutely soaked in dark side energy. Natural formations, ancient geological events, something about Korriban just resonated with the dark side of the Force. The Dark Jedi felt it the moment they entered orbit. It was like coming home to a place they'd never been. But the real discovery was the people living there, the Sith species. And yeah, before they were a philosophy or an order, Sith literally referred to a specific alien race native to Korriban. These beings were humanoid, but definitely not human. Red skin ranging from crimson to dark burgundy, bone spurs protruding from their faces and bodies, these intense yellow or orange eyes that seemed to glow in the dark. They were naturally larger and more physically imposing than humans, built like warriors. They were force sensitive. Not all of them, and not nearly as strong as the Dark Jedi, but they had this primitive connection to the Force that they'd been using for thousands of years. The Sith species had built a civilization, but it was tribal and brutal. They worshipped the dark side, though they didn't call it that. To them, it was just power, the natural order of things. Strength determined everything. The strongest led, the weak served or died. They had these shamans called Sith priests, who could use basic force abilities, mostly manipulation, minor telekinesis, creating fear in their enemies. Nothing compared to what a trained Jedi could do, but impressive for a species that developed force abilities naturally, without any formal training tradition. Their society was organized into kingdoms and empires that constantly warred with each other. Korriban's history was basically an endless cycle of conquest. Brief unity under a strong ruler, then collapsed back into warring factions when that ruler died. They built massive ziggurats and temples to their gods, who were basically personifications of dark side concepts: violence, domination, passion, ambition. When Ajunta Pal's ships landed, the Sith people thought the gods themselves had arrived. Think about it from their perspective. These beings descend from the sky in metal ships, already mind-blowing, and they can do things with the Force that the most powerful Sith priests couldn't dream of. The Dark Jedi realized immediately what they had here. These weren't primitives to be dominated. Well, they were that too. But more importantly, they were a ready-made power base. An entire species that already worshipped strength and the dark side, that had the numbers and warrior tradition the Dark Jedi lacked, and that would follow them without question, because they genuinely believed these newcomers were divine. So the Dark Jedi leaned into it hard. They didn't correct the Sith people's assumption about their godhood. Why would they? Ajunta Pal in particular embraced the role. He presented himself as the ultimate authority, the master of powers beyond mortal understanding. The Sith people ate it up. The early days were actually pretty smooth. The Dark Jedi divided up territories among themselves, each becoming God King over different Sith kingdoms. They introduced technology the Sith had never seen: better metallurgy, advanced construction techniques, actual spacecraft. But they were careful not to give away too much too fast. Keep the mystery, keep the power, differential clear. What's fascinating is how quickly the cultures merged. The Dark Jedi adopted Sith language, Sith aesthetics, even Sith rituals. They took the tribal dark side practices and supercharged them with their advanced Force knowledge. The Sith people's shamanic traditions got systematized into actual dark side training methods. Those crude Force abilities the Sith priests had, the Dark Jedi taught them to refine and amplify them. Within a generation, you started seeing hybrid offspring. Dark Jedi breeding with Sith people created these Force-sensitive hybrids who had the raw power of their Jedi ancestry, combined with the natural dark side affinity of the Sith species. These hybrids became the new elite class, stronger in the Force than pure-blooded Sith, but with that savage edge that pure humans often lacked. Eventually, Ajunta Pal became the first Dark Lord of the Sith. The Sith people held this coronation ceremony that was apparently incredible and terrifying in equal measure. Thousands of Sith warriors assembled in the Valley of the Dark Lords, this massive canyon on Korriban lined with ancient tombs. They brought out artifacts and relics from their most legendary conquerors. Sith priests performed rituals that channeled dark side energy until the sky itself turned dark, and they crowned Ajunta Pal as supreme ruler. He took the title Janari, the Dark Lord. Every Sith, from the highest priest to the lowest slave, swore absolute loyalty to him. The other Dark Jedi became his shadow hand, his enforcers and viceroys who ruled in his name. Paul immediately started consolidating power and unifying the Sith kingdoms under his rule. The Sith people were used to constant warfare between kingdoms, but now they had a supreme authority that commanded all kingdoms. Some resisted, obviously. There were Sith kings who'd ruled for decades and didn't appreciate these newcomers taking over. Pal crushed them brutally and publicly. He'd show up with a small force, challenge the king to single combat, then utterly humiliate them using Force powers they couldn't counter. After killing the king, he'd spare the kingdom if they swore loyalty. Resist, and he'd annihilate them. It worked. Within a few years, Korriban was unified under Dark Jedi rule for the first time in its history, and Pal wasn't content with just Korriban. The Sith people had colonized a few other planets in the region: Ziost, Relg, Kar Delba. These became part of the growing Sith Empire, with Korriban as its beating heart. The Dark Jedi also discovered something else about Korriban that made it perfect for their purposes. The planet's dark side saturation did something to Force users who stayed there. It amplified their power, but also accelerated their corruption. Spending time on Korriban, especially in places like the Valley of the Dark Lords or the tombs of ancient Sith kings, would push you deeper into the dark side whether you wanted it or not. For the Dark Jedi, it was a feature. They built their main fortress temple on Korriban, a massive structure that combined Dark Jedi architectural knowledge with Sith aesthetic sensibilities. The result was this imposing ziggurat that radiated dark side energy so intensely that non-Force sensitives would get nosebleeds and nightmares just walking near it. Inside, they established the first formal dark side academy, where they trained both pure-blooded Sith and hybrid offspring in Force techniques the Jedi Order had forbidden. Zozan took charge of the scholarly side, creating a library of dark side knowledge that would become legendary. She compiled everything the Dark Jedi had learned, added the shamanic traditions of the Sith people, and then pushed further into experimental territory. Her students were encouraged to push boundaries, to fail spectacularly in pursuit of breakthrough discoveries. A lot of them died in those experiments, but those who survived became incredibly powerful. Karnes Muir continued his twisted life experiments, but now he had an entire species to work with. He created the first Sith spawn, these grotesque creatures that were part Sith, part beast, part dark side abomination. The Masasi warrior caste actually descends from his early experiments, though they be refined over generations into the perfect dark side warriors. The Sith people themselves benefited in weird ways from this arrangement. Sure, they'd lost their independence, but they gained unified purpose and dramatically increased power. But make no mistake, this was a tyranny. Ajunta Pal and his fellow Dark Jedi ruled through fear and overwhelming power. Slavery became institutionalized on a massive scale. Sith and conquered populations were worked to death, building monuments to their god kings. Yet this system worked for them in a twisted way. The Sith Empire found stability through strength. Everyone knew where they stood in the hierarchy, and everyone had a theoretical path to climb higher, usually over the corpses of those above them. It was brutal and unsustainable in the long run, but in the short term, it created a civilization completely unified in its devotion to the dark side. The foundation was laid. The Sith Empire had been born, and the galaxy had no idea what was coming. So the Sith Empire has been building itself up for about 1,000 years at this point, and now we get to the era when everything clicked, the Golden Age. And at the center of it all was this guy named Marka Ragnos, who became Dark Lord around 5,100 BBY and ruled for literally a century. Ragnos was a hybrid, half Dark Jedi human, half pure-blooded Sith. He got the best of both worlds genetically, the raw Force power from his human side, the natural dark side affinity, and physical prowess from his Sith heritage. Dude was apparently built like a tank, stood over 7 feet tall, and could tear through enemies like paper. But what made him legendary? It was his political cunning. See, by this point, the Sith Empire had a serious problem. The whole might makes right philosophy sounds great, until you realize it means everyone's constantly trying to kill everyone else to climb the ladder. Dark Lords before Ragnos typically lasted maybe 10-20 years before getting assassinated by ambitious underlings. The Empire would lurch from crisis to crisis as new Dark Lords seized power, each bringing their own agenda and purging their predecessors' supporters. Ragnos changed the game. He understood that unlimited internal conflict would eventually tear the Empire apart, so he created this system where ambition was channeled but not eliminated. Think of it like a pressure valve. He encouraged competition among his subordinates, even expected it, but he set boundaries. You could scheme, plot, backstab your rivals, but you couldn't threaten the stability of the Empire itself. Anyone who crossed that line got destroyed so thoroughly that their entire bloodline was wiped out. He established the Sith Council as a formal institution. Before Ragnos, the Dark Lord basically ruled by personal power and whoever was strong enough to be his enforcers. Ragnos created an actual governing body with defined roles and responsibilities. The council included the most powerful Sith Lords, each controlling different aspects of the Empire: military, intelligence, sorcery, alchemy, diplomacy with subject worlds. They'd compete for influence and position, but within a framework that kept things functional. This is when Sith sorcery really took off as a discipline. Before, it was mostly individual experimentation and hoarding of knowledge. Under Ragnos, sorcery became systematized. The greatest Sith sorcerers were given resources and apprentices, tasked with pushing the boundaries of what dark side magic could accomplish. And man, did they deliver. They figured out how to create force storms, artificial tempests of dark side energy that could level cities. Battle meditation techniques that could turn the tide of entire campaigns by enhancing their own troops while demoralizing enemies. Illusions sophisticated enough to fool entire populations. One sorcerer named Karnak developed a technique to drain the force from living beings across entire planetary populations, funneling that energy to Sith warriors in battle. Thousands would drop dead, while Sith soldiers became temporarily unstoppable. Sith alchemy reached new heights too. They were engineering entire ecosystems. Planets were terraformed using the Force, their very geology and atmosphere twisted to resonate with the dark side. They created alchemical weapons, blades that could cut through lightsabers, armor that could shrug off blaster fire and even resist Force attacks. Poisons that targeted Force sensitives specifically, killing Jedi while leaving normal people unharmed. The Massassi warrior caste became truly formidable during this period. Multiple generations of selective breeding and alchemical enhancement created these warriors who were basically dark side super soldiers. They stood 8 to 9 feet tall, built like walls of muscle, with natural armor-like skin and enhanced healing. But they weren't mindless brutes. Massassi were trained from childhood in combat tactics, strategy, and operating advanced weapons. A single Massassi warrior could take on a dozen regular soldiers and win. What's fascinating is how Ragnos used them. The Massassi became his personal enforcers, loyal only to the Dark Lord. If a Sith Lord got too ambitious or troublesome, Massassi kill teams would show up and solve the problem. This gave Ragnos a counterweight to other powerful Sith. They might be incredible Force users, but could they fight off 20 Massassi warriors working in perfect coordination? Usually not. The Empire expanded aggressively during Ragnos' reign. They pushed deeper into the Outer Rim, conquering system after system. The military machine was operating at peak efficiency. Sith fleets would arrive, demonstrate overwhelming power, offer terms, submit and keep your local government with a Sith overseer, or resist and get annihilated. Most chose submission. The economic boom during this period was real. The Sith aristocracy lived in obscene luxury, palaces that took decades to build, personal collections of artifacts worth more than some planet's GDP, harems, private armies, the works. The thing about golden ages, they don't last. Ragnos ruled for 100 years through sheer power and cunning, but he was still mortal despite all the life extension techniques at his disposal. As he got older, the question of succession became urgent. Who would replace him? Different factions backed different candidates, and the Empire started experiencing tension that Ragnos could barely contain, even at full strength. When Ragnos finally died around 5000 BBY, the Empire was at its absolute peak in terms of territory, wealth, and power. But it was also a powder keg waiting to explode, because everything that made the Golden Age work was built around one man's ability to keep ambitious Sith Lords from tearing each other apart. And the moment he was gone, that's exactly what started happening. So Marka Ragnos dies, and immediately the Empire has a problem. Actually, 2 problems, both named after their ambitions. Ludo Kresh and Naga Sadow, 2 of the most powerful Sith Lords, both think they should be the next Dark Lord, and their visions for the Empire couldn't be more different. Ludo Kresh was old school, a traditionalist. He believed the Empire should consolidate what it had, stay hidden in the Outer Rim, keep building strength in secret. Don't rock the boat, don't attract attention from the Republic, just keep doing what worked under Ragnos. Kresh had support from a lot of the established Sith aristocracy who were living pretty comfortably and didn't want to risk it all on some grand adventure. Naga Sadow was the opposite, ambitious, aggressive, visionary in a terrifying way. He looked at the Empire and saw stagnation. Sure, they controlled a decent chunk of space, but the galaxy was huge and the Republic had no idea they existed. Sado wanted to explode onto the galactic stage, conquer Republic space, prove Sith superiority once and for all. He had support from younger Sith Lords, military commanders eager for glory, basically everyone who thought playing it safe was boring. The power struggle started at Ragnos's funeral, which is pretty on brand for the Sith. They're literally standing around the guy's tomb in the Valley of the Dark Lords, and Kresh and Sado start arguing about who should succeed him. The argument escalates, lightsabers get drawn, and they're about to duel right there when Ragnos's spirit manifests. His ghost shows up and basically tells them both to knock it off because their fighting is going to destroy everything he built. Did they listen? Of course not. Ragnos's spirit fades and the two camps immediately start maneuvering for position. What followed was basically a Sith civil war, though it was fought more through political scheming and assassinations than open battles at first. Kresh controlled more of the council, but Sado had the military on his side. Stalemate. Two Republic hyperspace explorers, Gav and Jori Daragon, accidentally stumbled into Sith space. Their nav computer malfunctioned and dropped them right into the Korriban system. First contact between the Sith Empire and the Republic in over 1,000 years, and it was completely random. The Sith captured them immediately, dragged them before the council. Kresh wanted them executed quietly, kill the witnesses, maintain secrecy, hope the Republic doesn't send anyone looking for them. But Sado saw an opportunity. He orchestrated this elaborate scheme where he rescued the Daragons from Kresh, gaining their trust, while secretly learning everything about Republic space from them. Hyperspace routes, defenses, political structure, all of it. Sado then pulled off this incredible manipulation. He staged a fake attack on Korriban using ships that appeared to be Republic vessels, but were actually his own forces in disguise. The attack damaged some facilities, killed some Sith, looked totally legitimate. Sado used this to whip the Empire into a frenzy. Look, the Republic knows about us now. They're coming to destroy us. We need to strike first. Kresh called bullshit on this, because he wasn't stupid and could smell Sado's scheme. But Sado had already won the propaganda war. The Sith population was terrified and angry, ready for war. The council voted to make Sado the new Dark Lord and authorized him to launch a preemptive strike against the Republic. Kresh got sidelined, though he didn't accept defeat gracefully. Sado sent Jori Daragon back to Republic space, knowing she'd lead his fleet right to major Republic worlds. He assembled an armada, hundreds of warships, thousands of Massassi warriors, Sith sorcerers, war beasts, the whole terrifying package. The plan was brilliant in its audacity. Simultaneous surprise attacks across multiple key Republic systems. Hit them everywhere at once, overwhelm their defenses before they could coordinate a response. In 5,000 BBY, the Great Hyperspace War kicked off. Sado's fleet followed the hyperspace routes Jori had taken and emerged at Corus Major, Kirek, and other core Republic worlds. The initial attacks were devastatingly effective. Nobody in the Republic had seen military technology like this in centuries. Sith warships with superior weapons, Massassi shock troops who could tear through clone soldiers, Sith sorcerers creating illusions that made Republic defenders think they were facing armies 10 times the actual size. The Battle of Corus Major was chaos. Sado himself led the assault, and he deployed this insane strategy using Sith meditation spheres, these specialized ships where Sith sorcerers would channel battle meditation to coordinate the entire fleet telepathically, while simultaneously projecting massive illusions. Republic forces saw Sith fleets that didn't exist, shot at phantom targets, got confused and disorganized, while the real Sith ships tore them apart. On the ground, Massassi warriors were unstoppable. Republic soldiers had never faced anything like these dark side-enhanced super soldiers who could shrug off blaster fire and rip people apart with their bare hands. Morale collapsed in some units. Soldiers just fled rather than face Massassi in close combat. The Jedi Order scrambled to respond. They'd been caught completely off guard by the existence of an empire of dark side force users. Jedi Masters led Republic forces in counterattacks, and when Jedi fought Sith directly, things got wild. These were the first large-scale battles between light and dark side force users in over a millennium. Now Sado's plan started falling apart. Remember Ludo Kresh? He hadn't accepted defeat back home. While Sado was off invading the Republic, Kresh launched his own attack on Sado's forces. He showed up with a fleet at Koros Major and started attacking Sado's armada from behind, turning the battle into a three-way clusterfuck. Sado had to fight the Republic in front and Kresh's fleet behind him. He managed to destroy Kresh's flagship, apparently killing Kresh himself, but the damage was done. His forces were depleted, disorganized, and the Republic was rallying. Jedi-led counter-offensives started pushing Sith forces back from the worlds they'd conquered. The Republic assembled a massive fleet under the command of Empress Teta and her Jedi advisors. They tracked Sado's retreat back towards Sith space, pursuing his battered armada. Sado kept trying to delay them with sacrificial rearguard actions, using illusions to make his remaining forces seem larger than they were. But the Republic kept coming. The final confrontation happened at Primus Galud, a system on the edge of Sith space. Sado made a last stand there, and when it became clear he couldn't win, he used Sith sorcery to destabilize the system's star, triggering it to go supernova. The explosion wiped out most of the pursuing Republic fleet and bought Sado enough time to escape with his surviving forces. But surviving forces is generous. Sado limped back to Sith space, with maybe a tenth of the armada he'd left with. Thousands of Sith warriors dead, dozens of ships destroyed, the invasion a complete failure. And when he got back to Korriban, he found even more problems waiting. The Sith Council was furious. Sado had promised glorious conquest and delivered catastrophic defeat. The Empire's location was compromised. The Republic knew where they were now. They'd lost a huge chunk of their military strength. And Ludo Kresh's followers, who'd survived their leader's death, were screaming for Sado's head. Sado didn't stick around to face the music. He gathered his most loyal followers, loaded up whatever ships he had left, and fled into the unknown regions, just disappeared into uncharted space, taking with him some Massassi warriors and a few dozen Sith loyalists. The rest of the Empire was left to deal with the fallout of his failed invasion. The aftermath was brutal. The Sith Empire went into panic mode. They expected Republic retaliation, a full-scale invasion to wipe them out. They fortified Korriban and Ziost, recalled military forces from outlying territories, basically went into defensive lockdown. The Golden Age was over, replaced by paranoia and fear. The Republic did send follow-up expeditions to Sith space, and they found a civilization in disarray. Without Sado's leadership, and having lost so much military strength, the Sith couldn't mount effective resistance. Republic and Jedi forces systematically dismantled Sith holdings, destroyed temples, shattered the infrastructure that had taken centuries to build, but they didn't find everyone. A lot of Sith went into hiding, scattered across the Outer Rim or deeper into unknown space. The Empire, as a unified political entity, was destroyed, but the knowledge, the philosophy, the dark side tradition, that survived. Hidden on forgotten worlds, buried in secret tombs, preserved by survivors who swore revenge. Naga Sado himself ended up on Yavin 4, a jungle moon where he went into hibernation using Sith sorcery, surrounded by his Massassi servants. He'd stay there for 1,000 years, a failed conqueror, sleeping in the ruins of his ambitions, dreaming of the empire he'd destroyed through his own arrogance. The Great Hyperspace War lasted maybe a year of actual fighting, but it ended the ancient Sith Empire's golden age forever. Everything Marka Ragnos had built, the stability and power that had taken a century to establish, got torn down in months because two Sith Lords couldn't share power, and one of them was too ambitious for his own good. Classic Sith problem: the dark side gives you incredible power, but also makes you your own worst enemy. So after the Great Hyperspace War crashed and burned, the Sith went underground for centuries. The Republic thought they'd won. The Jedi figured the dark side threat was handled. Everyone moved on with their lives. But dark side knowledge doesn't disappear. It festers, waits, finds new hosts. And around 4,400 BBY, it found a guy named Freeden Nad. Nad was a Jedi apprentice, and by all accounts, he was talented as hell. Strong in the Force, quick learner, ambitious. Too ambitious, actually. He wanted to advance faster than his master thought was safe. He'd ask about techniques his master wouldn't teach him, push boundaries that made the Jedi Council uncomfortable. Sound familiar? This is basically the Sith origin story on repeat. Eventually, Nad got fed up with Jedi restrictions and just straight up murdered his master. Then he bailed from the Order and went searching for forbidden knowledge. He'd heard rumors, ancient stories about the Sith Empire, and he wanted to find whatever was left of their teachings. Dude was determined. His search led him to Yavin 4. Remember Naga Sadow hibernating there with his Masaci? Nad found Sadow's temple, woke the ancient Dark Lord from his 1,000-year nap, and basically said, "Teach me everything." Sadow, bitter about his failures and eager to spread Sith philosophy again, took Nad as his apprentice. For years they trained together, Sadow passing on all the Sith sorcery, alchemy, and dark side techniques he'd accumulated over his lifetime. When Sadow finally died for real, couldn't sustain himself any longer, even with all his life extension tricks, Nad left Yavin 4 as a fully trained Sith sorcerer. But he didn't call himself a Sith Lord or try to rebuild the Empire. Instead, he went to this backwater planet called Onderon and took it over through a combination of force powers and cunning. Onderon had this weird situation where the main city, Iziz, was constantly under siege by beast riders, people who'd been exiled to the wilderness and learned to tame the dangerous creatures there. Nad showed up, helped the city defend itself using his powers, got himself crowned king, and ruled for decades. He kept his Sith knowledge secret mostly, just used it to maintain power and extend his lifespan. When Nad eventually died, he did what any good Sith would do, preserved his spirit in his tomb so he could keep manipulating events. His tomb on Onderon became this nexus of dark side energy, and his ghost would appear to Force sensitives, whispering knowledge, corrupting them slowly. Generational influence, playing the long game. Fast forward to 3996 BBY. There's this Jedi named Exar Kun, and he's basically freed on Nad 2.0. Brilliant, powerful, arrogant, convinced he knows better than the Jedi Council. Kun was obsessed with ancient Sith history as an academic interest at first. He thought that by studying the Sith objectively, understanding their techniques, the Jedi could better defend against dark side threats. His masters told him this was dangerous, that you can't study the dark side without being corrupted by it. Kun thought that was close-minded nonsense. He started researching independently, digging through archives, finding references to Sith worlds and artifacts. The more he learned, the more fascinated he became, not with the Sith as historical villains, but with their power. He started thinking the Jedi had it wrong, that they were limiting themselves out of fear, that real wisdom meant understanding both light and dark. The Jedi Council saw where this was heading and tried to intervene. Kun's master confronted him, they argued. It got heated. In the confrontation, Kun's master died. Accounts vary on whether Kun killed him intentionally or it was an accident during a struggle. But either way, Kun was responsible. And instead of facing consequences, Kun fled the Order entirely. He went straight to Onderon to Freedom Nad's tomb. Nad's spirit appeared to him and basically said, "Oh good, fresh meat." Nad started teaching Kun, but in a manipulative way, giving him just enough knowledge to make him crave more. Sending him on quests to different Sith worlds to find artifacts and holocrons, all while slowly corrupting him deeper into the dark side. Kun travelled to Korriban, explored the tombs in the Valley of the Dark Lords. He found holocrons left by ancient Sith that taught him sorcery techniques. Then Nad's spirit directed him to Yavin 4, to the temples Sadow had built. There, Kun found the Masaci, descendants of the warriors Sadow had brought, now reduced to primitive tribes after 1,000 years of isolation. On Yavin 4, something pivotal happened. Kun found a Sith holocron that contained a map to other dark side knowledge, and he also encountered a Sith worm, this massive creature corrupted by dark side alchemy. The thing attacked him, and in desperation, Kun tapped into the dark side completely, without reservation, to kill it. That moment of total surrender to dark power changed him fundamentally. The Masaci, sensing his strength in the dark side, recognized him as their new master. Sadow reborn in their eyes. Kun enslaved them, forced them to rebuild and expand the temples using Sith sorcery and alchemy. He set himself up as a god king on Yavin 4, exactly like the ancient Dark Jedi had done on Korriban thousands of years before. But Kun didn't want to hide on one moon. He wanted to reshape the galaxy, and he realized he'd need allies to pull it off. Enter Ulic Qel-Droma. Ulic was another Jedi, part of a group trying to fight a war against these criminals called the Krath, who'd taken over the Empress Teta system. The Krath were using Sith artifacts and dark side powers. They'd actually found some of Naga Sado's old relics. Ulic came up with this genius plan to infiltrate the Krath by pretending to fall to the dark side, learn their secrets from the inside, then take them down. Except you can't pretend to fall to the dark side. It doesn't work that way. The more Ulic used dark side powers to maintain his cover, the more real his fall became. He got involved with Alima Keto, one of the Krath leaders, and she was teaching him actual Sith sorcery from the artifacts they'd found. Ulic kept telling himself he was in control, that he was still a Jedi deep down, but that's what everyone tells themselves. When Ulic's Jedi friends came to rescue him, he refused to leave. His brother Kay tried to pull him back, and Ulic attacked him. That's when everyone realized Ulic's fall wasn't an act anymore. It was real. The Jedi retreated, and Ulic stayed with the Krath, now genuinely committed to the dark side. Exar Kun heard about this powerful dark side force user who'd taken over the Krath, and he was intrigued. Two dark side powerhouses operating independently seemed inefficient, so Kun travelled to the Empress Teta system to confront Ulic, figure out if he was a potential ally or a rival who needed eliminating. They met and immediately started trying to kill each other, because of course they did. The duel was apparently spectacular. Two incredibly powerful force users throwing everything they had at each other, tearing apart the building they were fighting in. But before either could win, the spirits of ancient Sith Lords manifested. The exact mechanism is unclear, maybe triggered by the amount of dark side energy being thrown around, maybe some artifact in the area. But ghosts of long-dead Dark Lords appeared and basically said, "Stop fighting each other, you idiots." They proclaimed Kun as the new Dark Lord of the Sith and Ulic as his apprentice and war leader. First time in 1,000 years, those titles got used. Kun and Ulic formed an alliance, combining their forces. Kun had the Massassi warriors, knowledge of Sith sorcery, and the temples on Yavin 4 as a base. Ulic had the Krath military, control of the Empress Teta system, and tactical genius as a former Jedi general. Together they started recruiting, and here's where it gets scary. They went after Jedi. Kun returned to the Jedi training center on Ossus disguised, started subtly corrupting students. He'd find the ambitious ones, the frustrated ones, the ones who felt the Order held them back, and he'd whisper in their ears, "The Jedi lie to you. There's so much more power available if you're willing to take it." He convinced dozens of Jedi to join him. These weren't random dark side users. These were trained Jedi Knights who turned, bringing all their skills and knowledge with them. Kun created a new Sith Brotherhood practically overnight, and every member was a former Jedi who knew exactly how the Order operated, what their weaknesses were, where to strike. The Jedi Order suddenly had a massive problem, not some ancient evil from history books, but a present, an active threat led by one of their own who understood them intimately. Exar Kun declared war on the Jedi Order and the Republic, calling it the Great Sith War. Ulic took command of the military side, and he was vicious. He'd been trained as a Jedi general, so he knew Republic military doctrine inside and out. He led Krath and Massassi forces in lightning strikes against key Republic positions. Planets fell in days. Republic fleets got ambushed and destroyed. The war spread across dozens of systems almost immediately. Kun focused on the mystical side. He performed Sith rituals on a scale that hadn't been seen in a millennium, drawing on dark side nexuses across the galaxy. He created these dark side artifacts and distributed them to his followers, amplifying their powers. His most twisted achievement was developing a technique to drain the life force from entire populations to fuel massive force abilities. The Jedi Order mobilized for total war. Hundreds of Jedi Knights became generals, leading Republic forces against the Sith. But they were hampered by their own principles. They wanted to redeem their fallen brothers, especially Ulic, who some Jedi still believed could be saved. That hesitation cost lives. The war devastated planets. Entire star systems became battlegrounds. Millions died in the fighting, and both Kun and Ulich kept pushing forward, convinced they were building a new order that would replace the corrupt Republic and stagnant Jedi. But the cracks were already showing. Dark side alliances are always fragile, held together by shared enemies more than genuine trust. And the Jedi were learning, adapting, finding ways to counter Sith sorcery with their own techniques. The Great Sith War was reaching its peak, and the galaxy was burning. The Sith had returned with a vengeance, led by a former Jedi who'd mastered ancient dark side knowledge. The stage was set for a confrontation that would reshape the galaxy once again. Remember when Naga Sado's invasion failed and the Sith Empire collapsed? Well, not everyone got wiped out by the Republic's counterattack. There was this other Sith Lord named Vitiate, and his story is absolutely wild. Vitiate was born around 5113 BBY on a planet called Nathema, back when it was called Medrias. The kid was Force-sensitive from birth, but not in a normal way. He was terrifyingly powerful, even as a child. At age 10, he straight up murdered his father using the Force. Not in self-defense, not by accident, just decided his dad was in the way and killed him. His mother was so scared of him, she basically let him do whatever he wanted after that. By 13, Vitiate had attracted the attention of Marka Ragnos himself, who recognized the kid's potential and gave him the title of Lord Vitiate, youngest Sith Lord in history at that point. But Vitiate wasn't interested in playing politics in the main empire. He took his title, went back to Medrias, and established his own little kingdom there, ruled it as a teenage god emperor, while the rest of the Sith Empire did its thing. When the Great Hyperspace War kicked off, Vitiate stayed out of it completely. Didn't join Naga Sadow's invasion, didn't support Ludo Kresh's opposition. Just watched from his fortress on Medrias while the Empire tore itself apart. Smart move, as it turned out. After Sadow's defeat, when the Republic was hunting down Sith remnants, Vitiate saw an opportunity. Surviving Sith Lords were scattered, desperate, looking for leadership. Vitiate sent out a call, "Come to Nathema, we'll regroup, we'll figure out how to survive this disaster together." Hundreds of Sith Lords showed up, bringing their apprentices, their knowledge, their artifacts. What happened next is one of the darkest moments in galactic history. He'd been planning this massive ritual, something beyond anything the Sith had attempted before. He was going to drain the Force itself from every living thing on the planet. Every Sith Lord, every apprentice, every citizen, every animal, every plant, every microorganism. All of it would die, and their collective Force energy would flow into him. The ritual took days. Vitiate had positioned Sith Lords at specific locations across the planet, told them it was a defensive ward to hide them from Republic detection. They started the ritual willingly, not realizing what was actually happening until too late. As the technique activated, they felt their life force being ripped away. They tried to resist, tried to stop it, but Vitiate's will was absolute. Imagine the screaming. Thousands of Sith Lords, the most powerful dark side users in the galaxy, all dying at once as their essence got consumed. 8,000 Sith died in that ritual, along with millions of regular people. The entire planetary population, every living thing, turned to dust simultaneously. When it was over, the planet itself became a void, a place where the Force simply didn't exist. Anyone Force-sensitive who visited afterward would feel nothing, not the dark side, not the light side, just absolute emptiness. The ground was ash, the cities were intact but lifeless, like a perfectly preserved tomb. And Vitiate stood at the center of it all, now empowered beyond measure. The ritual made him essentially immortal, and gave him Force powers that dwarfed what any single Sith Lord had possessed. He could dominate minds on a planetary scale, survive injuries that would kill anyone else, transfer his consciousness to new bodies if needed. He'd achieved something close to godhood through the most horrific mass murder in Sith history. But Vitiate knew the Republic was still hunting Sith. He couldn't rebuild openly in known space, so he gathered the few Sith who'd survived by not attending his ritual, those who'd been too smart or too distant to come, and he led them on an exodus into the unknown regions. The journey took years. They fled beyond mapped hyperspace routes into regions of the galaxy where navigation was nearly impossible due to stellar anomalies and gravitational chaos. Republic pursuit fell away because their ships couldn't safely follow. The Sith remnant was alone in uncharted space, guided only by Vitiate's visions and brutal determination. Eventually they found a world, Dromund Kaas. It was a planet perpetually covered in storms, dark and forbidding, but rich in the Force. More specifically, rich in the dark side. Ancient Sith had visited it millennia before and left structures behind. The place resonated with dark side energy in a way that reminded them of Korriban. Vitiate declared this would be the capital of a new Sith empire, not a continuation of the old one. Something different, something that learned from past mistakes. He took the title of Sith Emperor and set about building a civilization in secret. The early years on Dromund Kaas were harsh. They had limited resources, hostile wildlife, constant storms. But the Sith who'd followed Vitiate were survivors, the hardest and most cunning of their kind. They built Kaas City from nothing, carved it out of the jungle, using the Force and slave labor from species they conquered in nearby systems. Vitiate's philosophy for this new empire was different from what had come before. The old Sith Empire had been chaotic, with lords constantly fighting each other for supremacy. He was the Emperor, immortal and unchallengeable. Below him was the Dark Council, 12 Sith Lords who administered different spheres of influence: military offense, military defense, ancient knowledge, sorcery, technology, and so on. The council members could scheme against each other within limits, but they couldn't threaten the Emperor or the stability of the Empire. Anyone who tried got destroyed. Vitiate demonstrated this periodically by casually obliterating Sith Lords who'd gotten too ambitious, reminding everyone that the power gap between him and them was insurmountable. They built academies on Dromund Kaas and later on Korriban when they eventually reclaimed it. The training philosophy emphasized loyalty to the Empire as much as personal power. Yeah, you'd still have rivalries and competitions, but serving the Empire was paramount. Vitiate introduced a new title system too. Darth became a special designation for the most powerful and accomplished Sith Lords, those who sat on the Dark Council or led major military campaigns. It was something you earned through exceptional achievement, not just a title every Sith Lord could claim. The Empire expanded slowly and methodically into the unknown regions. They conquered primitive civilizations, enslaved populations, harvested resources, but they did it quietly, making sure the Republic had no idea they existed. Every ship that accidentally stumbled into their space got captured or destroyed. No witnesses, no leaks. Over the centuries, they built a military machine designed for one purpose: eventual revenge against the Republic. Enormous fleets, armies of soldiers and war droids, Sith assassins and sorcerers. But Vitiate wasn't in a hurry. He had literally forever. The ritual on Nathema made him functionally immortal as long as he wasn't killed. He could wait 1,000 years for the perfect moment to strike. The culture that developed on Dromund Kaas was fascinating in a messed up way. It was Sith philosophy, refined and focused. They preserved all the ancient knowledge from Korriban and the Old Empire, studied it, expanded on it. But there was less of the chaotic infighting. Competition existed, sure, but it was more structured, more controlled. Vitiate himself became increasingly detached from day-to-day governance. He'd spend decades in meditation, working on Force techniques that nobody else could comprehend. Sometimes he'd withdraw completely, leaving the Dark Council to run things while he pursued whatever cosmic-level, dark-side projects he was obsessed with. Rumour among the Sith was that the Emperor was working on something big, some ritual or technique that would dwarf even what he'd done on Nathema. They called themselves the True Sith, to distinguish from other dark side groups that popped up over the centuries. In their view, they were the legitimate continuation of the ancient Sith Empire, the keepers of pure Sith philosophy, undiluted by failure or compromise. One of the weird things about this hidden empire was how patient they were. Generations of Sith lived and died without ever seeing the Republic or fighting the Jedi. Their entire lives were spent preparing for a war that might not happen in their lifetime. But they accepted it because the Emperor commanded it, and disobedience meant death or worse. Vitiate experimented extensively with his own powers. He learned to transfer his consciousness between bodies, possessing individuals and riding them until they burned out from the strain. He developed techniques to dominate entire populations mentally, turning thousands into extensions of his will. The Empire also refined Sith alchemy and sorcery. Without the constant warfare that had plagued the old Empire, their researchers and scholars could work uninterrupted for generations. They created new war beasts, developed poisons and diseases tailored to specific species, built weapons and armor that incorporated dark side techniques. By the time we get to the Mandalorian Wars era, around 3976 BBY, this hidden Sith Empire had been building in secret for over 1,000 years. They had massive military forces, near-perfect intelligence networks that gathered information from the Republic without being detected, and an immortal emperor who'd been planning revenge for a millennium. So around 3976 BBY, the Mandalorians suddenly decide to start conquering everything in sight. The Mandalorian clans, these warrior cultures obsessed with combat and honor, launch this massive invasion into Republic space from the Outer Rim. Seemingly random, right? Wrong. Vitiate had his fingerprints all over it. The Mandalorians were perfect pawns for what the Sith Emperor wanted. They were fierce warriors, with a code of honor that demanded they seek worthy opponents. They weren't motivated by territory or resources particularly. They wanted glorious combat. Vitiate manipulated their leadership, specifically this guy named Mandalore the Ultimate, convincing him that the Republic and the Jedi were the ultimate test for Mandalorian warriors. How did Vitiate manipulate them? Through intermediaries and subtle mental influence, planting ideas that felt like they came from the Mandalorians themselves. The whole invasion was designed as a test. Vitiate wanted to see how the Republic would respond to a major military threat, probe their defenses, identify their strategies, and most importantly, see what the Jedi would do. The Mandalorians hit hard and fast. They weren't just raiding, they were conquering entire systems in the Outer Rim, enslaving populations, destroying anything that resisted. Planets like Cathar got absolutely devastated. The Mandalorians wiped out most of the Cathar species in what became known as the Cathar Genocide, a horrific massacre that shocked the galaxy. The Republic's response was pathetic at first. They tried diplomacy, sanctions, half-hearted defensive measures. The Senate debated endlessly while systems burned. The Jedi Council refused to get involved militarily. They sensed something wrong about the whole situation, felt dark side influence, but couldn't pinpoint it. So they decided the Jedi should stay out of direct combat and focus on defense and meditation. This drove a lot of younger Jedi absolutely insane. They were watching the Mandalorians slaughter civilians by the millions, and the Council was saying, "Wait and trust in the Force." Among those frustrated Jedi were two who'd become extremely significant, Revan and Malak. Revan was this prodigy, maybe the most naturally talented Jedi of his generation. Brilliant strategist, incredibly powerful in the Force, charismatic leader. Malak was his best friend, almost as powerful, fiercely loyal. Both of them watched the Mandalorian advance with growing horror and anger at the Council's inaction. Revan studied the Mandalorian campaigns obsessively. He analysed their tactics, their psychology, their weaknesses. He became convinced that the only way to stop them was overwhelming military force led by someone who understood war on a fundamental level. And he believed the Jedi, with their Force abilities and tactical training, could be that force, if they'd just commit to fighting. The breaking point came when Revan visited Cathar and saw the aftermath of the genocide. Mass graves, cities in ruins, the few survivors traumatized beyond healing. Something changed in Revan that day. He decided the Jedi Council was wrong, that their passivity was itself a moral failure. If the Council wouldn't act, he would. Revan gave this passionate speech to the Jedi Order, calling on those who wanted to fight to join him. The Council forbade it, said any Jedi who left to fight would be defying the Order. Revan basically said, "So be it," and walked out. And hundreds of Jedi followed him, young knights mostly, but also some masters who agreed the Council had lost their way. They called themselves the Revanchists initially, then just became known as Revan's Jedi, as they took command of Republic military forces. Malak became Revan's second-in-command and closest advisor. Together they transformed the Republic's flailing defense into an actual military campaign. Revan was a genius at war. He didn't just react to Mandalorian moves, he anticipated them, outmaneuvered them, hit them where they were weak. He used the Force in combat in ways that shocked both sides, coordinating entire battlefields through battle meditation, seeing patterns and probabilities that let him win battles he should have lost. The tide of the war turned. Revan started reclaiming conquered systems, pushing the Mandalorians back. He was ruthless when he needed to be. He'd sacrifice fleets or entire battalions if it meant strategic advantage. Some of his own followers were disturbed by how cold he could be, but it worked. The Mandalorians, who respected strength above all, started seeing Revan as a worthy opponent. Revan kept capturing Mandalorian strongholds and finding these weird artifacts, Sith relics, strange technology that felt wrong in the Force. At first he thought the Mandalorians had just scavenged them from old battlefields, but the pattern was too consistent. Someone had been supplying the Mandalorians with dark side artifacts, subtly influencing their leadership. Revan became obsessed with finding out who was behind it. He started interrogating high-ranking Mandalorian prisoners personally, using the Force to pull information from their minds. The deeper he dug, the more evidence he found of manipulation from outside the Republic, whispers of a hidden Sith empire in the unknown regions. This is where Revan made a fateful decision. He convinced himself that defeating the Mandalorians wasn't enough. He needed to find this hidden threat and neutralize it before it could move against the Republic directly. But he kept this goal secret from most of his followers. Malak knew, some of his closest allies knew, but the rank-and-file Jedi fighting under him had no idea. The final confrontation with the Mandalorians came at Malachor V in 3960 BBY. Revan lured the bulk of the Mandalorian fleet there and triggered this superweapon called the Mass Shadow Generator. The weapon created a gravitational anomaly that crushed most of the Mandalorian and Republic ships in the area. Thousands of vessels and hundreds of thousands of lives lost in moments. It was a Pyrrhic victory. Yeah, the Mandalorians were broken as a military force, but the casualties on the Republic side were enormous. Worse, Malachor V became a wound in the Force. From all the death, a dark side nexus that would corrupt anyone who stayed there too long. Some of Revan's Jedi followers were on the surface when the weapon activated. Those who survived were twisted by the experience, traumatized in ways that pushed them toward the dark side. After the battle, Revan personally defeated Mandalore the Ultimate in single combat, taking his helmet as a trophy and symbol of victory. But instead of returning triumphantly to the Republic, he took a fleet, about a third of the Republic military forces that had followed him, and headed into the unknown regions with Malak. The official story was that they were pursuing retreating Mandalorian remnants. The truth was, Revan was hunting for the Sith Empire he knew was out there. He'd pieced together enough from captured artifacts and interrogations to know roughly where to look, and he was convinced that if he could find them first, he could stop whatever they were planning. What Revan didn't fully understand was that this was exactly what Vitiate wanted. The whole Mandalorian war had been a test, and Revan had passed with flying colours. He'd proven himself brilliant, powerful, ruthless when necessary, willing to sacrifice for victory, perfect Sith material. Revan's fleet jumped into the unknown regions, following fragmentary star charts and Force visions. They found abandoned Sith outposts, fought through automated defences, discovered ancient temples, and all the while, they were being watched, studied, evaluated by Sith intelligence. Finally, they found Droman Khas, or rather, they were led there. Sith ships appeared and offered to guide them to the Emperor rather than fighting. Revan was suspicious, but also curious. He wanted to confront whoever had orchestrated the Mandalorian war. So he and Malak went to meet the Sith Emperor, thinking they could negotiate or fight if necessary. Vitiate didn't negotiate. He didn't need to. When Revan and Malak entered his throne room, the Emperor assaulted their minds with Force power beyond anything they'd experienced. They tried to resist, combining their strength, but it was like trying to hold back a tidal wave with your hands. The Emperor broke them. Not quickly. He took his time, methodically dismantling their mental defenses, their sense of self, their connection to the light side. He showed them visions of the Republic's corruption and weakness, convinced them that the galaxy needed to be conquered and unified under strong rule to survive what was coming. But Vitiate did something subtle too. He didn't completely dominate their minds like puppets. That would make them less useful. Instead, he twisted their goals and reasoning while leaving their personalities mostly intact. Revan still wanted to save the galaxy, but now he believed the path to salvation was through Sith conquest. Malak still followed Revan, but his loyalty became corrupted by dark side ambition. The Emperor sent them back to known space with a mission: conquer the Republic, but do it gradually, keep the infrastructure intact, prepare it for integration into the Sith Empire when Vitiate was ready to reveal himself. Revan and Malak would be the vanguard doing the hard work, while the true Sith watched from the shadows. There was one more piece to this. Revan's fleet found something in the unknown regions. They discovered the Starforge, this ancient Rakatan space station that could manufacture ships and weapons on an unlimited scale, using the Force itself and raw materials fed into it. The Starforge was a game changer. Suddenly Revan had the means to build a fleet that could challenge the entire Republic military. Combined with the Sith philosophy and techniques the Emperor had taught him, plus his own military genius, Revan became unstoppable. He and Malak returned to known space changed. They'd left as Jedi trying to protect the galaxy. They came back as Sith Lords ready to conquer it. Revan took the title Darth Revan, Malak became Darth Malak, and they began converting the Jedi who'd followed them into the unknown regions into Sith apprentices. The Jedi Council sensed something had gone horribly wrong, but they didn't know what. Their wayward Jedi had found the enemy they'd been searching for, and that enemy had turned them into weapons pointed right back at the Republic. So Revan and Malak come back from the unknown regions as full-blown Sith Lords with this insane weapon factory called the Starforge, and they immediately start building an armada. We're talking about a production facility that could crank out warships faster than the Republic could destroy them, feed it raw materials and dark side energy, and it would manufacture fully operational battle cruisers in days instead of months. The Starforge was Rakatan technology, built by this ancient empire that had collapsed thousands of years ago. The Rakata had been these force-sensitive conquerors who enslaved half the galaxy before their civilization imploded. Their tech was partially organic, powered by the Force itself, and the Starforge was their masterpiece. It was also corrupting as hell. The thing fed on the dark side and amplified it in anyone who used it. Revan established his base of operations and started the Jedi Civil War in 3959 BBY. But what made it different from previous Sith conflicts? Revan fought smart. He targeted infrastructure selectively, conquered worlds mostly intact, and tried to win over populations through propaganda and demonstrating strength rather than pure terror. His strategy was surgical. He'd identify key shipyards, manufacturing centers, and resource-rich worlds and capture them. The Republic's industrial base got systematically dismantled or turned to his purposes. Revan wanted to rule the Republic, not destroy it, so he avoided the kind of devastation that would take decades to recover from. Malak commanded the fleets while Revan handled overall strategy. They converted many of the Jedi who'd followed them into the unknown regions, training them in Sith philosophy and dark side techniques. These fallen Jedi became the core of Revan's Sith Order, skilled, disciplined, ideologically committed. The Republic was getting crushed. Revan knew all their military tactics because he'd developed most of them during the Mandalorian Wars. He could predict their responses, outmaneuver their fleets, and his Sith apprentices would sabotage or assassinate key Republic leaders. Worlds fell one after another, and the Senate was panicking. The Jedi Order was in crisis mode too. Not only were they fighting Sith who used to be their own, but the Council was dealing with the realization that their decision to stay out of the Mandalorian Wars had directly led to this. If they'd supported Revan back then, maybe he wouldn't have fallen. The guilt was eating at them. The Jedi came up with a desperate plan. They'd ambush Revan's flagship, try to capture or kill him before his conquest was complete. It was risky as hell, but the alternative was watching the Republic fall completely. A Jedi strike team, led by Bastila Shan, infiltrated Revan's ship during a battle. Bastila had this rare force ability called battle meditation that could influence entire battles, boosting allied morale while crushing enemy will. She was crucial to the plan. The team fought through Sith defenses, reached the bridge where Revan was commanding the battle, and that's when Malak made his move. See, Malak had been growing increasingly resentful of being second to Revan. The dark side amplifies ambition and jealousy, and Malak had plenty of both. When he saw the Jedi boarding Revan's ship, he saw an opportunity. Instead of helping defend his master, Malak ordered his own ships to fire on Revan's flagship, targeting the bridge specifically. The betrayal was calculated and brutal. Malak figured either the bombardment would kill Revan and he'd take over, or it would kill the Jedi strike team and weaken Revan enough that Malak could finish him off later. Classic Sith apprentice logic. When your master shows vulnerability, you strike. The bridge got hit hard, explosions everywhere, the ship breaking apart. Revan was critically injured, barely alive. Bastila managed to reach him in the chaos and made a split-second decision that would haunt her. Instead of killing him, she used the Force to stabilize him and brought him back to the Jedi Council. Malak assumed Revan was dead and immediately declared himself the new Dark Lord. He was less subtle than Revan had been, more aggressive and destructive. Without Revan's strategic brilliance, the Sith war effort became cruder, but in some ways more terrifying, because Malak didn't care about preserving infrastructure. He'd bombard planets into submission, use more terror tactics, rule through fear rather than Revan's mix of fear and calculated mercy. Meanwhile, the Jedi Council had this barely alive Sith Lord in their custody and faced an ethical nightmare. They could execute him, but he had knowledge about the Sith that could help end the war. So they made a controversial choice. They used the Force to wipe Revan's memories, completely erase his identity, and implant false memories of a different life. Memory wipe is some seriously invasive stuff, borderline dark side territory, but the Council justified it as necessary. They essentially killed who Revan had been and created a new person in the same body. Then they fed this new version of Revan selective information, gradually training him as a Republic soldier, seeing if they could turn the galaxy's greatest military mind against the Sith he'd once led. He just knew he was a soldier fighting against this Sith threat. Bastila became his unofficial keeper, assigned to watch him and make sure the memory wipe held, while also utilizing his tactical brilliance for the Republic war effort. Slowly, through combat and investigation, this amnesiac Revan started uncovering clues about his past. The truth started leaking through the Council's mental blocks. Bastila tried to keep him in the dark, but it was inevitable. You can't completely erase someone, especially not someone as powerful in the Force as Revan. When the full truth hit, it nearly broke him. Everything he'd been fighting against was his own legacy. The Sith hunting him were his former apprentices. Malak was his betrayer, but also his former best friend. The Republic was losing because of strategies he'd developed. The weight of that realization was crushing. He had a choice: embrace his Sith identity and reclaim his empire, or reject what he'd been and fight to undo the damage. Different people in his position might have gone different ways, but Revan chose redemption. Though his reasons were complex, part of it was genuine remorse for the devastation he'd caused. Part was that his amnesiac self had formed new bonds and loyalties. But there's also evidence that somewhere deep in his mind, Revan had been resisting Vitiate's programming, even as a Sith Lord. His relatively restrained conquest strategy might have been subtle rebellion against the Emperor's plan to weaken the Republic for eventual true Sith invasion. Revan decided to finish what his new self had started, destroy the Starforge and stop Malak, even if it meant destroying his own greatest achievement. He led a Republic fleet to the Starforge's hidden location, fought through Malak's defenses, and confronted his former apprentice on the station itself. The duel between Revan and Malak was personal and vicious. The fight raged through the Starforge, while Republic and Sith fleets battled around them. Revan won. He killed Malak, and with Bastila's help, directed Republic forces to destroy the Starforge. The station's destruction crippled the Sith fleet immediately. Without the Starforge producing new ships, they couldn't sustain the war. Sith forces collapsed, retreated, or surrendered. The Jedi Civil War ended with the Republic victorious but devastated. Revan became this tragic hero figure, the fallen Jedi who'd returned to save the galaxy from his own dark legacy. But his story was more complicated than simple redemption. He'd retained knowledge from his time as a Sith Lord. He knew the real threat was still out there. The Mandalorian Wars, his own fall, the Jedi Civil War. All of it had been manipulation by an enemy the Republic didn't even know existed. And that enemy was patient, building strength, waiting for the perfect moment to strike a Republic that was now weaker than ever. The galaxy celebrated the war's end, but Revan couldn't shake the feeling that this was just an intermission, not a resolution. So after Revan and Malak's whole mess, you'd think the Sith would have learned something about the dangers of infighting. Spoiler alert, they absolutely did not. For the next several centuries, the galaxy got treated to what was basically an endless cycle of Sith rising up, fighting each other as much as the Jedi, and collapsing under the weight of their own egos. This period, roughly from 2000 BBY to 1000 BBY, was just Sith War after Sith War. Different Dark Lords would emerge, gather followers, cause chaos, then get backstabbed by their own apprentices or defeated by the Jedi. Rinse and repeat. The Jedi Order was exhausted from constantly having to mobilize against new Sith threats, and the Republic was bleeding resources trying to fight wars on multiple fronts. What made this era particularly messy was that the Sith had completely abandoned any pretense of unity. There wasn't a single Dark Lord everyone recognized anymore. There were multiple people claiming the title simultaneously, each with their own followers, their own territories, their own interpretation of Sith philosophy. It was like a franchise that got too big and lost all quality control. Some of these Sith were pretty impressive individually. They'd master incredible dark side techniques, build up armies, capture planets, but they'd always sabotage themselves through paranoia and ambition. A Sith Lord would have a dozen powerful apprentices, and instead of using them effectively, he'd spend half his energy keeping them from murdering him, and the other half trying to play them against each other. The apprentices weren't any better. They'd spend so much time plotting against their masters and competing with fellow apprentices that actual external threats became secondary concerns. There are accounts of Sith forces losing battles because their commanders were too busy scheming against each other to coordinate properly. This all came to a head with the Brotherhood of Darkness. This Sith Lord named Khan had what seemed like a brilliant idea. What if the Sith stopped fighting each other and actually cooperated? Radical concept, right? He created this organization where there wasn't a single Dark Lord, but rather a brotherhood of equals, all Dark Lords together working toward the common goal of destroying the Jedi. On paper, it sounds great. In practice, it was a disaster waiting to happen, because Sith fundamentally can't do equality. The whole dark side philosophy is built on domination, on being stronger than everyone else. Telling ambitious Sith Lords they're all equals is like telling sharks to form a democracy. It goes against their nature. But initially, it worked better than anyone expected. The Brotherhood of Darkness assembled this massive army. Thousands of Sith, regular soldiers, war droids, the works. They launched coordinated campaigns against the Republic and actually started winning. The Jedi Order found itself facing a Sith force larger and more organized than anything they'd seen in centuries. The war dragged on for years, with battles across dozens of worlds. Both sides were taking heavy casualties, and it became this grinding war of attrition. The Jedi mobilized their entire order, turning Jedi into generals and commanders out of necessity. Young Padawans who should have been training peacefully found themselves on battlefields. Khan held the Brotherhood together through sheer charisma and political maneuvering for a while, but the cracks were showing. Ambitious Sith Lords within the Brotherhood kept trying to position themselves as first among equals, undermining Khan's authority while pretending to support him. The whole egalitarian structure was a facade covering the usual Sith power games. One of the Brotherhood members was this guy named Bane. Dessel was his birth name, but he'd taken the name Bane after proving himself as a soldier and Force user. Bane was different from most Sith. He was a thinker, a student of history. While other Sith were obsessed with immediate power and glory, Bane studied the ancient Sith empires, analysed why they'd failed, looked for patterns, and Bane came to a radical conclusion. The Sith were their own worst enemy. Every Sith empire had collapsed not because the Jedi were stronger, but because Sith couldn't stop fighting each other. The dark side made them powerful, individually, but weak collectively. The Brotherhood of Darkness was just the latest example of Sith trying and failing to cooperate. Bane became disillusioned with the Brotherhood. He thought Khan's "everyone's a Dark Lord" approach was making the Sith weaker, diluting their power by spreading it among too many people. He started speaking up in Brotherhood councils, arguing they needed to restructure, return to having a single Dark Lord with subordinates. This did not make him popular. Khan and the other Brotherhood leaders saw Bane as a troublemaker and essentially kicked him out. They figured one dissenting voice didn't matter when they had thousands of Sith. Bane left and went searching for ancient knowledge, visiting old Sith tombs and temples, studying holocrons that most Sith dismissed as outdated. Meanwhile, the war between the Brotherhood and the Jedi reached its climax at Ruusan, a planet that became the site of multiple massive battles. Both sides poured forces into the system, determined to break the stalemate. The fighting was brutal: lightsaber duels, Force users hurling boulders and lightning, armies clashing in ruined cities. The Jedi were led by Lord Hoth, this tactical genius who'd organized the Army of Light. Basically every Jedi who could fight gathered into one massive force. The Brotherhood matched them with sheer numbers and dark side power. Battle after battle on Ruusan, neither side able to gain a decisive advantage. Both bleeding forces they couldn't afford to lose. Khan became increasingly desperate. The Brotherhood was fracturing under the stress of prolonged war. Sith Lords were defecting, or just leaving. Tired of the endless fighting without clear victory, Khan needed something dramatic, something that would destroy the Jedi in one stroke and cement his leadership. So he came up with the Thought Bomb. This weapon was pure Sith sorcery, a ritual that would detonate and consume the Force essence of every Force-sensitive being in a huge radius, Jedi and Sith alike. It was basically a suicide attack on a massive scale, but Khan convinced himself and his followers that they could somehow shield themselves from its effects while it killed all the Jedi. He was wrong. The Brotherhood's Sith Lords gathered in a cave system on Ruusan and performed the ritual, pouring their combined dark side energy into creating this bomb. The Jedi sensed what was happening and rushed to stop it, but they were too late. The Thought Bomb detonated, and every Force user in the area died instantly, their spirits ripped from their bodies and trapped in the blast site. Hundreds of Jedi died. Nearly all of the Brotherhood of Darkness died. Lord Khan, all his senior leaders, basically every Sith who'd participated in the ritual, gone. The cave system became a tomb where their trapped spirits would scream in agony for centuries, unable to move on, locked in eternal torment. The Jedi who survived were scattered across Ruusan, traumatized by the psychic shockwave of so many deaths. They'd won, technically. The Brotherhood of Darkness was destroyed, but it was a Pyrrhic victory. The Jedi Order had lost a huge portion of their members, including many of their most experienced masters. In the aftermath, the Jedi searched Ruusan thoroughly for any surviving Sith. They found none. They searched the surrounding systems, checked reports from across the galaxy, interrogated captured Sith soldiers. No surviving Sith Lords anywhere. The Jedi Council made an official declaration. The Sith were extinct, destroyed at Ruusan along with their Brotherhood. They were wrong, but they had no way of knowing it. As far as the Jedi could tell, they'd finally won the ancient war. The Sith were gone. The galaxy could heal. The Republic celebrated. After 1,000 years of constant Sith conflicts, the threat was finally eliminated. The Jedi could return to being peacekeepers instead of warriors. Monuments were built on Ruusan, honoring the fallen. The Battle of Ruusan became legend, the final confrontation that ended the Sith forever. Except one Sith had survived. One guy who hadn't been at Ruusan, who'd been studying ancient texts and formulating a plan to fix everything wrong with Sith philosophy. Darth Bane emerged from hiding after the battle, looked at the smoking crater where his fellow Sith had annihilated themselves, and thought, "Yeah, I was right. Time to rebuild this whole thing properly." The Jedi thought they'd won. They had no idea the real Sith plan was just beginning. So Darth Bane is standing in the aftermath of Ruusan, surrounded by the corpses of 1,000 years of Sith failure, and he's thinking, "I've got to burn this whole system down and start over." The guy had spent months studying ancient Sith holocrons and texts while everyone else was busy dying, and he'd figured out exactly what kept going wrong. The problem was numbers. Every time the Sith got powerful, they'd accumulate more and more Dark Lords, each one training multiple apprentices, creating this exponentially growing pool of ambitious Force users who'd inevitably start killing each other. The dark side made you crave power, and when you've got hundreds of Sith all wanting to be on top, you get chaos. Bane realized the Sith had been thinking about power completely wrong. They thought more Sith meant more power, bigger armies, more Force users, greater threat to the Jedi. But actually, more Sith just meant diluted power and guaranteed infighting. Quality over quantity, except taken to an extreme nobody had considered before. His solution was radical and kind of insane. Only 2 Sith would exist at any given time. A master and an apprentice. That's it. No Sith armies, no councils of Dark Lords, no brotherhood of equals. Just 2 people holding all the Sith knowledge and power. The rule of 2, he called it. The master embodies power. The apprentice craves it. The master trains the apprentice in everything they know, holding nothing back, because the system only works if each generation is stronger than the last. And here's the twist that makes it brilliant and horrifying. The apprentice must eventually kill the master to take their place. Not might kill, not could kill, must kill. It's the only way to advance. This creates this perfect pressure system. The master is constantly challenged, forced to stay sharp and strong because their apprentice is literally training to murder them. The apprentice is motivated to learn everything possible because their survival depends on eventually being strong enough to overthrow their master. Neither can afford weakness or complacency, and when the apprentice finally succeeds in killing the master, they've proven they're genuinely stronger. Then they take on their own apprentice, passing on everything they learned, plus whatever innovations or improvements they've made. Each generation of Sith becomes incrementally more powerful than the last, building on centuries of accumulated knowledge and refinement. It's evolution through murder, basically. Natural selection applied to dark side philosophy. The genius of it was the secrecy aspect. With only 2 Sith existing, they could hide completely. The galaxy thought the Sith were extinct after Ruusan? Perfect. Let them think that. 2 people can vanish into a galaxy of trillions. No massive temples, no Sith empires, no obvious targets for the Jedi to find and destroy. Just 2 shadows working in complete secrecy. Bane also solved the succession problem that had plagued every Sith organization. When a master died in the old system, you'd get multiple apprentices fighting for control, fracturing the organization. With the rule of 2, succession was clean. The apprentice who killed the master was definitively the strongest, and they'd already be training their own apprentice to continue the line. But starting the rule of 2 meant Bane had to do something extreme. He had to ensure he was the only Sith left. Any surviving Sith from the Brotherhood would be competition, potential sources of diluted Sith teachings, threats to the system he was creating. So Bane hunted them down, every last Sith survivor from Ruusan or scattered across the galaxy. Bane found them and killed them. He was methodical and ruthless about it. Then he needed an apprentice, not just any Force-sensitive person. He needed someone with the potential to eventually surpass him, because that was the whole point. Bane found a young woman named Zannah, a Force-sensitive girl who'd survived Ruusan as a child. She'd witnessed the Thought Bomb's devastation, seen her friends die, and she had raw talent, plus the kind of trauma that could fuel dark side power. Bane trained Zannah personally, teaching her everything he knew about Sith philosophy, sorcery, lightsaber combat, manipulation. But he also told her from day one, your goal is to kill me and take my place. When you're strong enough, you'll challenge me, and one of us will die. That's how this works. This created a weird but effective relationship. Bane genuinely wanted Zannah to succeed, to become stronger than him, because that would validate his entire philosophy. But he also wasn't going to just let her kill him. She'd have to earn it by being legitimately more powerful. Mutual respect combined with the understanding that eventually one would murder the other. Every Sith Lord in the Rule of 2 lineage would take a Darth name, abandoning their birth identity. It was symbolic. You died to your old self and were reborn as Sith. Darth Bane, Darth Zannah, and every successor after would carry that title. The long-term plan Bane developed was called the Grand Plan, though it wouldn't be called that for centuries. The idea was simple, but required incredible patience. The Sith would manipulate galactic events from the shadows, gradually weakening the Republic and the Jedi over generations, until the moment was right to strike and take over completely. No more direct confrontations. No more massive wars that the Sith might lose. Just subtle manipulation, political corruption, economic sabotage, philosophical erosion. Plant ideas in the minds of politicians. Fund conflicts that would weaken Republic unity, encourage the Jedi to take on roles that would compromise their principles, death by 1,000 cuts over 1,000 years. The beauty of this plan was that it didn't require individual Sith Lords to be patient. It required the lineage to be patient. Each master-apprentice pair would make incremental progress over their lifetimes, then pass the mission to the next generation. No single Sith needed to live long enough to see the plan completed. They just had to advance it slightly before dying. Bane understood this would take centuries, maybe a millennium, but he'd studied enough history to know that was actually an advantage. The Jedi would forget the Sith existed, the Republic would grow complacent, security would relax, and when the Sith finally revealed themselves again, it would be too late for anyone to stop them. Years later, Zannah finally challenged Bane. They duelled, and accounts differ on exactly what happened, but Zannah emerged as the victor. Darth Bane was dead, the rule of two had its first succession, and Darth Zannah became the new master. She took on her own apprentice and continued the work. The lineage continued in shadow, Darth Zannah to her apprentice, who eventually killed her and took their own apprentice, generation after generation. Each pair of Sith operating in complete secrecy, unknown to the Jedi, advancing the grand plan incrementally. The galaxy moved on, thinking the Sith were a historical threat, a defeated enemy from the past. The Jedi relaxed into their role as Republic peacekeepers, no longer warriors. Politicians grew corrupt without any existential threat to keep them honest. The Republic's institutions slowly rotted from within, and in the shadows, the Sith watched, learned, and waited. Two individuals carrying the entire weight of Sith philosophy and ambition, preparing for a revenge that would take 1,000 years to fully execute. The rule of two was Darth Bane's legacy, and it would prove to be the most successful Sith strategy in history. So the rule of two kicks off, and for the next millennium, the Sith basically become ghosts. The Jedi think they're extinct, the Republic's celebrating peace, and meanwhile, there's always exactly two Sith somewhere in the galaxy, quietly screwing with everything while staying completely invisible. This era is wild because we don't even know all the Sith who existed during it. The whole point was secrecy, so they didn't leave monuments or write their names in history books. They'd operate through intermediaries, shell corporations, puppet politicians, criminal organizations, anything that kept their involvement hidden. Some of these Sith Lords lived entire lives and died without anyone except their apprentice knowing they were Sith. The lineage passed down through violence every generation. Master trains apprentice, apprentice eventually gets strong enough. They duel, winner takes all. Sometimes it happened after decades of training, sometimes after just a few years if the apprentice was particularly talented or ruthless. But it always happened eventually, because that was the system. What's fascinating is how the Sith philosophy evolved during this period. Each master would add their own innovations, their own interpretations, building on what came before. Some focused on political manipulation, becoming senators or advisors who'd push legislation that weakened Republic institutions. Others specialized in economics, creating financial crises that would destabilize entire sectors. Some were more traditional, focusing on dark side sorcery and ancient techniques. But they all followed the grand plan: weaken the Republic gradually, corrupt the Jedi's role, position everything for an eventual takeover. The timeline didn't matter. Whether it took 500 years or 2,000, the Sith would eventually win because they were patient and the Jedi weren't even watching for them. The Jedi Order during this period slowly transformed in ways that played right into Sith hands. Without an active dark side threat, the Jedi became more political, more involved in Republic governance. They'd mediate disputes, serve as ambassadors, advise the Senate. Sounds noble, except it meant they were getting tangled up in politics, making compromises, accumulating secular power. This was exactly what the Sith wanted. The Jedi's strength had always been their spiritual clarity and independence. The more they became embedded in Republic politics, the more compromised they became. They'd have to make deals, support flawed politicians, turn a blind eye to corruption if it served Republic stability. Slowly, the Jedi were becoming what they'd once stood against. The Sith also worked on corrupting Republic institutions directly. They'd fund senators who'd push for centralized power, weaken checks and balances, create emergency powers that could be exploited later. Nothing obvious, nothing traceable back to them. Just steady pressure toward making the Republic easier to take over when the time came. Criminal organizations became useful tools. The Sith would discreetly support pirate groups, smuggling rings, anything that created chaos the Republic had to deal with. Keep them busy with small fires so they don't notice the Foundation burning. Some crime lords probably had no idea their backers were ancient enemies of the Jedi. Fast forward to around 67 BBY, and we get Darth Plagueis entering the picture. This guy was something else. He became obsessed with immortality and understanding the midi-chlorians, these microscopic organisms that lived in cells and connected beings to the Force. The Jedi knew about midi-chlorians academically, used them to test Force sensitivity, but Plagueis wanted to manipulate them directly. He believed the Force itself could be controlled at this fundamental level. If you could manipulate midi-chlorians, you could create life, prevent death, essentially become a god. Plagueis set up labs, conducted experiments that were equal parts brilliant science and dark side madness. He'd take living subjects and try to alter their midi-chlorian counts, see if he could enhance Force sensitivity or extend lifespan. Some of his experiments actually worked, which is terrifying. Plagueis managed to keep himself alive far longer than natural, using dark side techniques combined with his midi-chlorian manipulation. He could influence the living Force, heal fatal injuries, even allegedly bring people back from the brink of death by manipulating the midi-chlorians in their cells. But Plagueis' real achievement, the one that would change everything, was more accident than intention. His experiments with creating life through midi-chlorian manipulation apparently triggered a reaction in the Force itself. The Force, pushed too far by Plagueis' meddling, created a response, a vergence, a chosen one who would eventually bring balance by destroying the Sith. That vergence was Anakin Skywalker, born on Tatooine with no father, just a mother who couldn't explain his conception. His midi-chlorian count was off the charts, higher than any Jedi ever recorded. The kid was literally created by the Force as a response to Sith manipulation, though nobody understood that connection at the time. Plagueis had no idea his experiments had triggered Anakin's creation, and even if he had known, he probably would have found it fascinating rather than alarming. The guy was arrogant enough to think he could control or redirect anything the Force did. While Plagueis was doing his mad scientist routine, he was also training an apprentice named Palpatine. Sheev Palpatine came from a wealthy Naboo family, politically connected, and he had this incredible gift for reading people and manipulating them. Plagueis saw potential and started training him in Sith philosophy and political manipulation simultaneously. Palpatine was a natural at the political game. He moved through Naboo society, then Republic politics, always climbing, always building influence. Under Plagueis' guidance, he became a senator, made connections across the galaxy, positioned himself as this reasonable moderate who everyone trusted. Nobody suspected he was a Sith Lord because he played the role perfectly. The relationship between Plagueis and Palpatine was interesting because Plagueis genuinely trusted his apprentice more than most Sith masters trusted theirs. He'd share his research, discuss his theories openly, treat Palpatine almost like a colleague, rather than just a student who'd eventually try to kill him. Big mistake. Palpatine was patient, learning everything Plagueis knew about midi-chlorian manipulation, immortality techniques, political strategy, all of it. He waited until Plagueis thought they were on the verge of achieving their goals together, until the old Sith's guard was completely down. Then one night, after Plagueis had been drinking and celebrating their success, Palpatine struck. Used the Force to stop Plagueis from breathing, kept him alive just long enough to tell him the truth. The apprentice had betrayed the master, the rule of two continued, and all Plagueis' knowledge was now Palpatine's alone. Darth Plagueis died surprised, killed by the student he'd trusted, exactly as the rule of two demanded, and Darth Sidious, as Palpatine now styled himself, took everything his master had learned and started planning the endgame of the 1,000-year grand plan. The galaxy had no idea what was coming. The Jedi were comfortable in their role as Republic servants. The Senate was corrupt and inefficient. Everything was positioned exactly as generations of Sith had worked toward, and Sidious had advantages no previous Sith Lord had possessed: complete knowledge of the Grand Plan's progress, a senator position with growing influence, and awareness of Anakin Skywalker, the Chosen One, who could be turned into the ultimate weapon. The shadows were about to become very real, and the galaxy wasn't ready. So Palpatine is now the sole Sith Lord after killing Plagueis, and he's sitting on 1,000 years of planning that's finally ready to execute. He's a respected senator, nobody suspects anything, and he's got his eyes on this kid Anakin, who's apparently the Chosen One. Everything's lining up perfectly. The Jedi find Anakin on Tatooine when he's 9 years old. Qui-Gon Jinn takes one look at the kid's midi-chlorian count and nearly has a heart attack. It's over 20,000, which is literally off the scale. The Jedi Council tests him and realizes he might be the one from the prophecy who will bring balance to the Force. They're excited but also nervous because prophecies are always vague and tend to work out in unexpected ways. Palpatine watches all this with extreme interest. The kid Plagueis' experiments, accidentally created, is now in Jedi hands, being trained as their ultimate weapon against the dark side. The irony is delicious. But Palpatine sees opportunity. If he could turn the Chosen One to the dark side, that would be the ultimate victory over the Jedi. But first, Palpatine needs to set up the conditions for taking over the galaxy. He needs chaos, war, a reason for the Republic to grant him emergency powers. So he starts orchestrating the most elaborate political manipulation in history. The Trade Federation blockade of Naboo in 32 BBY was Palpatine's opening move. He manipulated the Trade Federation leadership through his apprentice Darth Maul and various intermediaries, convinced them to blockade his own home planet over some trade dispute. The goal wasn't the blockade itself, it was the political fallout. Palpatine was representing Naboo in the Senate at the time. When his planet got blockaded, he used it to make the current Supreme Chancellor look weak and ineffective. Called for a vote of no confidence, which passed, and suddenly there's an election for new leadership. Palpatine positioned himself as the sympathetic victim whose planet was under siege, the reasonable moderate who could bring stability. He won. Senator Palpatine became Supreme Chancellor Palpatine, all because he orchestrated an attack on his own people. That's cold-blooded even by Sith standards. Meanwhile, he sent Darth Maul to handle the Jedi problem on Naboo. Maul was Palpatine's first apprentice after killing Plagueis, trained specifically as a weapon. Dude was all about combat, double-bladed lightsaber, intense acrobatics, pure aggression. Palpatine didn't teach Maul much Sith philosophy or political manipulation, just made him into a perfect assassin. Maul killed Qui-Gon Jinn, but got cut in half by Obi-Wan Kenobi. Palpatine probably wasn't too broken up about losing Maul. The apprentice had served his purpose by revealing the Sith's existence to the Jedi. Now the Jedi knew the Sith were back, but they had no idea how deep the conspiracy went, or that the Supreme Chancellor himself was the Sith Lord. This brings us to the Clone Wars setup, which is honestly Palpatine's masterpiece of manipulation. He needed a war, but not just any war, a war he controlled from both sides, so he created an enemy. Enter Count Dooku, formerly a respected Jedi Master who'd left the Order years earlier, disillusioned with how political the Jedi had become. Dooku was already skeptical of the Republic, saw its corruption clearly. Palpatine, now as Darth Sidious, approached him and offered an alternative. Help me burn down this corrupt system and rebuild something better. Dooku became Darth Tyrannus, Palpatine's new apprentice. But unlike Maul, Tyrannus was sophisticated, politically connected, a former Jedi who understood how both the Order and the Republic worked. Perfect for leading a separatist movement. Here's where it gets brilliant. Years earlier, a Jedi Master named Sifo Dyas had foreseen that the Republic would need an army for some coming conflict. He secretly commissioned a clone army from Kaminoan cloners without the Jedi Council's knowledge. Sifo Dyas died shortly after, probably killed by Dooku on Palpatine's orders. But the clone army order continued. Dooku, working for Palpatine, took over the project. The cloners modified the clones with inhibitor chips in their brains, programmed to follow certain commands, including Order 66, execute all Jedi. The clones were designed to be loyal soldiers for the Republic, who could be turned into Jedi killing machines at a single command. Meanwhile, Dooku openly formed the Separatist movement, recruiting corporations and systems that were genuinely unhappy with Republic corruption and taxation. The Trade Federation, the Banking Clan, the Techno Union, all these powerful economic entities joined up, bringing their droid armies with them. Suddenly there's this massive separatist threat that looks completely legitimate. The Republic discovered the clone army on Kamino right when the separatist crisis was heating up. The Senate was panicking about this droid army threat, and oh look, there's a mysterious clone army ready to defend the Republic. How convenient. The Senate granted Palpatine emergency powers to use this army, and just like that, the Clone Wars kicked off in 22 BBY. Here's the genius of Palpatine's setup. He controlled both sides. He was Supreme Chancellor of the Republic, commanding the clone army. He was also Darth Sidious, controlling the Separatists through Dooku. He could determine where battles happened, who won, how long the war lasted, everything. The war served multiple purposes. It militarized the Republic, getting everyone used to having a strong military and centralized authority. It gave Palpatine justification to accumulate more emergency powers. It forced the Jedi to become generals, commanders of clone troops, compromising their role as peacekeepers. The Jedi walked right into this trap. They became military leaders out of necessity, making tactical decisions that cost lives, getting covered in the moral compromises that come with war. They were so busy fighting separatists, they didn't have time to investigate who was really behind everything. Palpatine played both sides beautifully. The Republic was winning. He'd give Dooku intelligence that would help the separatists. Separatists getting too strong, he'd ensure the Republic got a victory. The war dragged on for 3 years, neither side able to decisively win exactly as Palpatine wanted. The whole time, he was watching Anakin Skywalker grow up. The kid became a Jedi Knight, fought in the Clone Wars, became a hero. But Anakin had issues. He was arrogant, emotionally volatile, terrified of losing people he loved. All weaknesses Palpatine could exploit. Palpatine positioned himself as Anakin's friend and mentor. The Chancellor would give him advice, praise him when the Jedi Council held him back, sympathize with his frustrations, slowly building trust, creating a relationship where Anakin saw Palpatine as someone who understood him better than his fellow Jedi. The Jedi Council was so focused on the war, they didn't see Palpatine grooming their chosen one right under their noses. They didn't realize the emergency powers they'd granted the Chancellor were setting up a dictatorship. They didn't understand that the clone army they commanded contained sleeper agents, programmed to kill them. Everything was moving toward Palpatine's endgame. Turn Anakin, execute Order 66, wipe out the Jedi, and transform the Republic into an empire with himself as absolute ruler. 1,000 years of Sith planning, all coming together in one perfectly orchestrated sequence of moves. The Jedi thought they were fighting a war. They were actually watching their own execution being set up in real time, too distracted to notice until it was way too late. So it's 19 BBY, the Clone Wars have been grinding on for 3 years, and Palpatine's ready to spring the trap. Everything's positioned perfectly. He just needs to flip Anakin Skywalker to the dark side, and then push the button that'll wipe out the Jedi Order in one move. Anakin's in a vulnerable spot. He's been having these nightmares about his wife Padme dying in childbirth. Yeah, he secretly married her, despite the Jedi's no attachment rules. The visions are driving him crazy because he lost his mother years earlier, and he's absolutely terrified of losing Padme the same way. Classic fear that the dark side loves to feed on. Palpatine sees his opening and tells Anakin this story about Darth Plagueis the Wise. It's framed as this old Sith legend, a Dark Lord so powerful he could manipulate midi-chlorians to create life and prevent death. Is it possible to learn this power? Anakin asks, practically drooling. Not from a Jedi, Palpatine says, and you can almost hear the hook setting. The Jedi Council isn't helping Anakin's state of mind. They're suspicious of Palpatine's growing power, and they ask Anakin to spy on the Chancellor for them. Anakin's torn, because Palpatine's been his friend and mentor for years, and now the Jedi want him to betray that trust. It makes the Council look political and manipulative, exactly what Palpatine's been suggesting they are. Then Palpatine drops the bomb, reveals he's actually Darth Sidious. the Sith Lord the Jedi have been hunting, but he doesn't attack Anakin or threaten him. Instead, he's honest, says he can teach Anakin how to save Padme using dark side techniques. He's offering what Anakin desperately wants in exchange for turning. Anakin's conflicted as hell. He reports Palpatine to Mace Windu, but immediately regrets it. Mace takes a team of Jedi Masters to arrest the Chancellor, and there's this insane confrontation in Palpatine's office. Palpatine kills 3 of the Masters in seconds with his lightsaber. Dude was hiding some serious combat skills. But Mace gets the upper hand and disarms him. Palpatine's on the ground, seemingly defeated, shooting Force lightning at Mace, who's deflecting it with his lightsaber. Then Anakin bursts in and sees what looks like a Jedi about to execute a defenseless old man. Palpatine's playing it up, crying about the Jedi being traitors, begging for mercy. Mace is ready to kill Palpatine. He knows you can't arrest a Sith Lord this powerful. It's too dangerous. But Anakin intervenes, cuts off Mace's hand. Palpatine immediately blasts Mace with lightning and throws him out the window to his death. And just like that, Anakin's complicit in murdering a Jedi Master. No going back from that. Anakin kneels before Palpatine and pledges himself to the Sith. Becomes Darth Vader right there, though he's still Anakin in a lot of ways. Conflicted, emotional, desperate. Palpatine's first order is brutal. Take a battalion of clone troopers to the Jedi Temple and kill everyone. Every Jedi, every Padawan, everyone. Purge it completely. Vader leads the 501st Legion into the temple, and it's a massacre. Jedi who'd fought beside these clones in the war, suddenly getting shot in the back. Younglings trying to hide getting hunted down. The temple that had stood for thousands of years becoming a slaughterhouse. Vader personally kills the Jedi there, including children, fully embracing the dark side through these horrific acts. While Vader's butchering the temple, Palpatine activates Order 66. The clone troopers across the entire galaxy simultaneously receive the command through their inhibitor chips. Clones who'd fought alongside Jedi for years, who'd formed friendships and bonds, suddenly turn and execute their generals without hesitation or remorse. The Jedi get annihilated. Masters leading battles get shot down by their own troops. Jedi on peacekeeping missions murdered by clone escorts. It's coordinated across thousands of worlds simultaneously. The few Jedi who survive are those lucky or skilled enough to escape the initial strike, scattered and hunted. Obi-Wan and Yoda are among the survivors. They return to Coruscant and find the temple filled with dead bodies and a recording of Anakin pledging himself to Palpatine. Obi-Wan can barely process it. His apprentice, his brother, the Chosen One, has become a Sith Lord and murdered children. Palpatine addresses the Senate and spins everything perfectly. The Jedi tried to assassinate him. They were plotting to overthrow the Republic. Order 66 was necessary to stop their coup. He reorganizes the Republic into the Galactic Empire with himself as Emperor, and the Senate applauds. They literally cheer as democracy dies. Vader goes to Mustafar to kill the Separatist leadership. Palpatine tying up loose ends now that the war served its purpose. Padme follows Anakin there, horrified by what he's become. Obi-Wan stows away on her ship. The confrontation between former master and apprentice is brutal, ending with Vader getting his limbs cut off and burning alive in lava. Palpatine arrives and saves what's left of Vader, reconstructing him with cybernetics. The suit, breathing apparatus, the iconic look, that's all medical necessity from his injuries. The Empire rises from the Republic's ashes. Palpatine rules with absolute power, Vader as his enforcer. They establish the Inquisitorius, former Jedi who turned to the dark side, tasked with hunting down surviving Jedi. These Inquisitors scour the galaxy for any Force sensitives who escaped Order 66. The purge is systematic and thorough. Jedi hiding on remote planets get tracked down. Force-sensitive children are killed or captured before they can become threats. Within a few years, the Jedi Order that had existed for millennia is reduced to maybe a dozen survivors scattered across the galaxy. Palpatine consolidates power through fear. He dissolves the Senate eventually, puts regional governors in charge with military support. Dissent gets crushed immediately and publicly. Entire planets that resist Imperial rule get made into examples. The Death Star project begins during this period, Palpatine's ultimate weapon, a space station that can destroy entire planets. The concept was developed during the Clone Wars, but now gets full funding and priority. It's both a strategic weapon and a symbol of the Empire's absolute power. Vader becomes the Emperor's fist, hunting rebels and enforcing Imperial will. He's terrifying. Guy can walk into a room and kill everyone with the Force, commands Star Destroyers, answers only to Palpatine. The galaxy learns to fear the black-armored figure with the mechanical breathing. The Sith won. After 1,000 years of planning, manipulation, and patience, they actually won. The Jedi are extinct, the Republic is gone, and a Sith Lord rules the galaxy with another at his side. The rule of two achieved what massive Sith armies never could: total victory through patience and deception. The dark side is unleashed across the galaxy, no longer hiding in shadows. Palpatine can openly practice Sith techniques, corrupt Force sensitives to serve him, use the dark side to maintain his power and extend his life. Everything the Jedi had built over millennia got torn down in a single day. Most people in the galaxy don't even realize what happened. They just know there was a war, the Jedi betrayed everyone, and now there's an Empire keeping order. Palpatine's propaganda machine rewrites history, making the Jedi look like the villains and himself the hero who saved civilization. The Sith had finally done it. The ancient dream of Sith supremacy was reality. So the Empire's been running the galaxy for about 2 decades, and Vader is Palpatine's enforcer, but calling him content would be a massive lie. The suit keeps him alive, but it's also a prison. Constant pain, limited mobility compared to what he had as Anakin. Breathing apparatus that makes every breath a reminder of his failure on Mustafar. Palpatine designed the suit that way, intentionally. It's life support, sure, but it's also deliberately uncomfortable, keeping Vader in a state of perpetual suffering. That suffering fuels his dark side power, but it also ensures he never gets strong enough to overthrow his master. The pain keeps him angry, and the anger keeps him powerful, but not too powerful. Vader spends those first years hunting down surviving Jedi, and every kill hollows him out a little more. These are people he fought beside, trained with, some he even called friends. He tells himself he's Darth Vader now, that Anakin Skywalker is dead, but the memories don't go away. They haunt him in meditation, in dreams when he sleeps in his Bacta tank. The worst part is knowing he destroyed everything for nothing. He turned to save Padme and instead killed her, or so Palpatine told him. That lie eats at him constantly. He gave up everything, murdered children, betrayed everyone he loved, and Padme died anyway. The dark side promised power to prevent death, and it delivered only more death. But Vader can't go back. He's too far gone, done too much, killed too many. The Jedi would never take him back, even if he wanted to return, which he tells himself he doesn't. So he buries himself in service to the Emperor, in hunting rebels, in the role of the Empire's fist. It's easier than thinking about what he's become. Then the Death Star gets blown up by this nobody pilot from Tatooine, and Vader feels something in the Force during that trench run, a presence he hasn't felt since. He can't quite place it. Raw talent, incredible potential, the kind of natural ability that reminds him of himself at that age. When he discovers the pilot's name, Skywalker, everything clicks. The boy is his son. Padme didn't die before giving birth. She had the baby, and Palpatine lied to him. For nearly 20 years, Vader's been told he killed his wife and child, living with that guilt, and now he finds out his son is alive and strong in the Force. This breaks something open in Vader that he's kept sealed for decades. He has a son, a child who survived, who's strong enough to destroy the Death Star, who has Anakin's gift for piloting and the Force. For the first time since Mustafar, Vader feels something other than rage and pain. He feels hope, though he'd never call it that. His first instinct is Sith logic. Find the boy, turn him to the dark side, use their combined power to overthrow Palpatine. Rule the galaxy as father and son. It's the traditional Sith apprentice move. But for Vader, it's also something else. A chance at family, at connection, at having something that's his rather than the Emperor's. Vader becomes obsessed with Luke. He's hunting him across the galaxy, but it's different from hunting Jedi. That's my son, that's my power in him, and desire to corrupt him, to not be alone in the darkness anymore. If Luke falls, Vader won't be the only Skywalker who chose the dark side. It would validate his choice somehow. The trap on Cloud City is calculated to push Luke into a corner. Vader captures Han and Leia, tortures them, knowing Luke will sense their pain and come running. When Luke arrives, Vader's trying to break him psychologically before their duel even starts, showing him his friends suffering, demonstrating the Empire's power, making him feel helpless. Their duel is Vader testing Luke, trying to gauge his strength and push him toward anger. Every taunt, every strike is designed to make Luke emotional, to pull him toward the dark side. Your destiny lies with me, Skywalker. He means that literally. Join me, fall like I did, we'll be together in darkness. Then Vader tells him the truth. He expects Luke to be angry, hurt, betrayed, emotions he can exploit. What he doesn't expect is Luke's reaction. The horror, the immediate rejection, the willingness to die rather than join him. Luke lets go and falls, choosing probable death over becoming what Vader is. That moment shakes Vader more than he'll admit. His son would rather die than be like him. That's how far gone Vader is, how completely corrupted. His own child sees him as a fate worse than death. It plants a seed of doubt that Vader tries to bury, but can't quite kill. Between Empire and Return of the Jedi, Vader's dealing with this internal war he hasn't experienced in years. Part of him is still plotting to turn Luke and overthrow Palpatine. But another part, a part he thought was dead, is wondering what it would be like to have his son's respect instead of his fear. To be Anakin again, not Vader. He crushes those thoughts when they surface. Anakin is dead. That weakness is gone. Sentiment is a liability, but they keep coming back, especially when he meditates or when he's alone. His son is out there, alive, fighting for something he believes in. Luke has what Anakin lost: hope, purpose beyond power, people who love him rather than fear him. When Luke surrenders on Endor, Vader's completely thrown. His son walks onto an Imperial shuttle and gives himself up, believing he can turn Vader back to the light. The kid's either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid, and Vader suspects it's both. They have this conversation where Luke insists there's still good in him, and Vader says, "You don't know the power of the dark side. I must obey my master." That line reveals everything. Vader's trapped, and he knows it. He's not serving Palpatine because he wants to, but because he has to. The dark side owns him, the Emperor owns him, and he's too weak to break free. When he tells Luke, "It is too late for me, son," he means it. He's accepted that he's beyond redemption. Bringing Luke before the Emperor is Vader's last attempt to have something. If he can't turn back, at least Luke can join him. They'll be together, even if it's in darkness. Palpatine will turn Luke. Vader will have his son at his side, and maybe that'll fill the void that's been eating at him for 2 decades. But watching Palpatine work on Luke, Vader starts to see clearly for the first time in years. The Emperor's using the same techniques he used on Anakin, exploiting fear, encouraging rage, creating impossible choices, and Luke's resisting in a way Anakin never did. Luke's stronger than his father was, more disciplined, more committed to his principles. The duel between father and son is torture for Vader. He's fighting his child, trying to corrupt him, doing exactly what Palpatine wants. Luke's appealing to the good in him, and Vader's blocking it out, maintaining the Vader persona, because letting Anakin surface means confronting everything he's done. When Luke hides and refuses to fight, Vader's probing his thoughts and finds Leia, a daughter, a twin, another child he didn't know existed. The revelation is staggering, but Vader's so deep in dark side thinking that his first response is tactical. If you will not turn to the dark side, then perhaps she will. That threat breaks Luke's restraint. His son comes at him with pure fury, and for a moment Vader sees exactly what he could become. A powerful dark side user, consumed by rage, unstoppable. It's what Vader wanted, but watching it happen feels wrong somehow. Luke's beating him down, and Vader's almost relieved because it means his son is stronger. Means the Skywalker legacy isn't just failure and corruption. Luke realizes in that moment he's becoming his father, and he stops, throws away his lightsaber. "I am a Jedi, like my father before me." Luke sees Anakin still inside the armor, still redeemable, still worth saving. Vader's watching this, and his son just rejected ultimate power to hold on to his principles. Did what Anakin couldn't do, chose right over easy, and Palpatine's response is to torture Luke with Force lightning, killing him slowly while mocking his faith in his father. Palpatine's laughing while Luke screams, and he's looking at Vader, expecting him to just watch his son die, because that's what Vader does. He obeys his master, serves the dark side, sacrifices everything, including family. And Vader's looking at his son dying, and something breaks, or rather, something that's been broken for 23 years finally heals. All the rationalizations, all the dark side conditioning, all the acceptance that Anakin Skywalker is dead, it shatters. His son believes in him, actually believes there's good still inside him, enough to risk everything on it. Luke loved him enough to die for the possibility of his redemption, and in that moment, Anakin Skywalker comes back. The love for his son overrides everything else. The Emperor's hold breaks, the dark side's grip loosens, and Anakin makes a choice. Save his son. Stop Palpatine. Do the right thing, even if it kills him. He grabs the Emperor and lifts him. Palpatine's still shooting lightning, and it's frying Vader's life support, cooking him inside his armor. Every second is agony beyond what he's endured for decades, but Anakin doesn't let go. He carries Palpatine to the reactor shaft and throws him in, the Emperor screaming all the way down. Vader collapses, his systems failing, dying from the lightning. He's got minutes at best. He wants to see his son with his own eyes, not through the helmet's filters. When the mask comes off, Anakin sees Luke clearly for the first time. His son, alive and strong and good despite everything. "You were right about me," Anakin says. "Tell your sister you were right." He acknowledges Leia, claims both his children, and admits that Luke's faith wasn't misplaced. There was good in him, and love pulled it back to the surface. "You've saved me," Anakin tells Luke. Anakin Skywalker dies redeemed. The last thing he sees being his son's face. The prophecy about bringing balance to the Force gets fulfilled in the most unexpected way. Anakin destroys the Sith by killing Palpatine and letting himself die, wiping out both master and apprentice in one act. The internal battle Vader fought for those final years between Empire and Jedi, between remaining the Emperor's weapon and reclaiming his humanity, was resolved by love. The same emotion that started his fall became the instrument of his redemption. Attachment to Padme led to darkness, but love for Luke brought him back to light. He was the most feared being in the galaxy, corrupted beyond recognition, responsible for atrocities spanning decades. But he wasn't beyond saving. Love reached him where nothing else could, and in choosing his son over his master, he broke the Sith's hold on the galaxy and on his own soul. The Sith promised Anakin power to prevent death. In the end, it was accepting death, embracing it to save his son, that gave him peace. The dark side kept him alive in suffering. Choosing the light let him die redeemed. Now about why all this Sith lore matters beyond just Vader's arc. It's mythology about power and corruption on a galactic scale. The Sith built empires, commanded armies, conquered worlds, and every single time they destroyed themselves through betrayal, ambition, and the inability to cooperate. The ancient Sith on Korriban, Naga Sadow's invasion, Exar Kun's war, the Brotherhood of Darkness, all ended the same way. Internal conflict undermining external conquest. The dark side gave them incredible power, but guaranteed they'd never keep it, because it fed the very traits that made them self-destructive. Even Palpatine's victory, the most successful Sith scheme in history, lasted only 2 decades before collapsing. The rule of 2 was genius, but it still ended with the apprentices' redemption breaking the cycle. The Sith's fatal flaw was built into their philosophy. Domination and betrayal can't create lasting stability. People love this law because it's not just good versus evil. It's temptation, about how easy it is to justify terrible things for good reasons, about power corrupting even the best intentions. Anakin fell trying to save someone he loved. Revan fell trying to save the Republic. The road to hell is paved with good intentions, and the Sith represent that journey. The cyclical nature matters too. Dark side users keep emerging because the temptations are eternal. After Palpatine, you get the Knights of Ren, other Darksiders, because the appeal of quick power and freedom from restraint doesn't disappear. The Sith as an organization might end, but what they represent is always there. And ultimately, it's hopeful. Vader's redemption proves that nobody's beyond saving, that love can reach even the most corrupted soul, that it's never too late to choose differently. The Sith seemed unstoppable, and they were defeated by a farm kid who refused to give up on his father. That's why Sith lore is amazing. It's got depth, tragedy, philosophy, and ultimately a message about the power of human choice and love to overcome darkness. Pretty damn good story if you ask me.